Okay, welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. If you all would have a seat, there's a lot of empty seats there, so if you all have seats, I'd appreciate it. We're going to have a roll call by our city clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record shall reflect that all members are present.
If you'll all rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, they'll be led by Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Please join me in honoring our nation's flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. So I'd like to remind everyone tonight that the Vista Municipal Code requires members of the public to observe order and decorum at the meeting and to conduct themselves in a courteous manner. The ordinance was adopted to allow for public input and to facilitate city business without disruption of the meeting. Applause is appropriate only for the items listed under the presentation portion of the agenda, and this is also listed on the agenda cover sheet. So with that, we will go to the approval of the agenda with our city manager, Patrick Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. There are no changes this evening.
Okay, we had a closed session today, and our city attorney, Daryl Piper, will take us out of our closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session on item CS1. No reportable action was taken.
Okay, thank you. What am I going to do here? Is that a little speech here? Okay. I'd like to take a council down below. We're going to do this evening we have a recognition of our 4th of July Star-Spangled sponsors, and we want to recognize them. So if the council members will join me at the podium for our first presentation. And what, is it down there? Or is this it right here? This is not it? This is it? Okay. So the City of Vista would like to acknowledge our generous 4th of July Spangled sponsors for their contribution in making our 2018 Independence Day event such an outstanding success. Without their support, the 4th of July celebration would not have been the best fireworks show in San Diego County. An estimated 10,000 people attended this year's display. So on behalf of the City of Vista, I want to thank each of them for being a generous community partners. We applaud their commitment to the community. At this time, I will present a certificate of appreciation to each of our $5,000 sponsors. And the first one is Daytron World Communications. Diane Aaron, is she still here? There she comes. Yay. Okay. The next one is Dick Miller, Inc., Glenn Bullock, and Jiddly Grace. Dr. Bronner's, Trudy Bronner and Lilia Figuera. And last, Watkins Wellness, Nadia Guerrero. So I want to thank you all again for partnering with us on our 4th of July celebration. We so appreciate it. And we did have the best 4th of July celebration. Did any of you come to our 4th of July celebration out here? Anybody? Got a few of you. Yeah, it was great. So anyway, so congratulations and thank you to all of our donors here. So we have picture time. Okay. Okay. Scary. Okay. Our second presentation tonight is our Vista Sheriff Station update by Captain Greg Rylersdam. So welcome, Captain.
Deputy Mayor,
There
esteemed
you
members
go.
of the council. Thank you for giving me a few moments of your time tonight to go over our mid-year. I'd like to start with the station overview. The Sheriff's Department, as staffed in Vista, has just under 140 total staff members. Just under 100 of them are deputy sheriffs or command staff. We have one captain, 2 lieutenants, 9 sergeants. There are 83 deputies total, 4 community service officers, 31 senior volunteers, and 7 reserve deputies. Our command structure is built where I'm at the top of the chains, and we have a bifurcated system where we have the patrol side, which is supervised by the patrol lieutenant, and he's in charge of the patrol sergeants and the traffic sergeant and their respective staff. And then we have the administrative side, which is our administrative sergeant, detective sergeants, and our special purpose sergeants, along with all the deputies that work for those folks. You can see the numbers there. We have 47 deputies at the station, and of the 47 deputies, 38 of them are contract city positions. 10 are contract city traffic deputies. That's 7 traffic cars and 3 motor officers. There are 9 contract city detectives and 10 contract city special purpose deputies. We do also have a contingent of folks that staff the unincorporated areas, and those are not paid for out of city funds. However, those resources are used to handle calls inside the city when necessary. We have 13 professional staff members at the station. They include 2 crime analysis workers, 2 crime prevention specialists, and then an administrative staff that staffs our front office and handles all of our administrative needs, deals with the public as they come into the front counter, provides an immense amount of administrative support to the law enforcement staff that works in the station. Patrol, these are the folks that are at our station 365 days, 24 hours a day. They are the true first responders to crime, traffic, and quality of life issues in the city. They are the jack of all trades. We have 4 patrol sergeants and 47 deputies. Again, 38 of those are contract city positions, and that includes 4 canine deputies and 2 PERT deputies, 2 PERT teams with PERT deputies and PERT clinicians. Our traffic unit is staffed with a traffic sergeant, 7 traffic cars, 3 motors, and 4 community service officers, as I said earlier. Their enforcement is hotspot and data-driven, based on crash and citation data that is overlaid, collisions versus enforcement. Gone are the days where we write tickets just to write tickets. We are out to write tickets with a purpose, to educate, and to reduce collisions, hopefully, in the city. Engineering requests come in, and they include modified roadways, added stop signs, speed limit changes, roadway restriping, etc. One of the other things that we get are public complaints that come into the department, and as they come in, and sometimes they come in through you folks and get to me that way, either way, the public complaints are handled by adding concerns to the list of complaints and are worked in addition to the above listed hotspot data. They're prioritized by the traffic division staff and are based on corroboration with known data and other complaints, and obviously the immediacy of safety concerns. Our detective unit consists of a detective sergeant, 9 contract city detectives, and 1 non-contract city detective, as well as 3 school resource officers and 2 juvenile diversion officers that are in that unit. Detectives handle all cases and related follow-up and are often involved at the inception of these calls. When we get a major call in the city, detectives are called out 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to assist with patrol to begin those investigations immediately. Cases may take days, months, or even years, depending on the circumstances of the case. And as a result, the detectives typically have dozens of cases in various stages at any time. Getting to our special purpose deputies, we have a community-oriented policing and problem-solving unit that consists of a sergeant and 6 deputies. The community-oriented policing deputies primarily focus on quality of life issues in the city. Their flexibility and wide range of assignments means that their job is never dull. They always have something new coming up. These are the deputies that you work with us and provide to us so we can take them away from handling radio calls and can handle issues in the city. Essentially, they're free to handle those things. And most recently, it's been attacking the problem that have been affected the communities involving illegal marijuana dispensaries. Those complaints come to us and to the city, and many times there's the impression that the sheriff's department is out there and just, hey, there's marijuana being sold in this building, we're going to go and abate that building. That's not actually how it happens. These come in as complaints. You can imagine you're living in your neighborhood and all of a sudden the house next to you becomes a marijuana dispensary, and people are coming at all times of the day and night and impacting traffic patterns and buying product and then using product right out in the neighborhoods and in the homes, and that's in front of the homes. Those are some of the issues that we were faced with earlier this year and late last year, and we worked with the city attorney's office to tackle those issues, and I think we've been relatively successful. Recently, we've been working with homelessness issues in the city, and there's also a misconception that we go out and we just go out and arrest the homeless, and that is absolutely not what's happening in our city. We are working closely with Health and Human Services within the county, Exodus Recovery, the McAllister Institute, and we're going out and doing outreach into the homeless communities in the areas that they frequent and trying to marry those folks up with services. Our goal would be to transition them from homelessness into secured housing. We're not always successful, but that doesn't mean that we stop trying. We actually have a pretty good relationship with a lot of the folks that we come into contact with. We have been successful in some instances in getting those people out of those situations, and some of those people remain in those situations. A lot of the time it's because they choose to. We have our gang enforcement team, which consists of a sergeant and 4 deputies. They're primarily tasked with conducting highly visible and strategic enforcement to deter gang activity in the city. Additionally, they arrest persons with outstanding arrest warrants, and they monitor compliance with probation or parole. They also conduct gang and drug awareness presentations for civic groups and educational groups within the community. We have a senior volunteer patrol that consists of 31 senior volunteers. We have 4 in our academy now, and we're always looking for more senior volunteers. All senior volunteer patrol applicants approved for the program attend a formal 2-week academy. Some of the topics include Alzheimer's safe return, crime prevention, CPR AED safety, department orientation, ethics and rules conduct, basic radio training, and traffic control. These folks are wonderful people who are over the age of 50 that help us supplement our numbers, frankly. When we have critical incidents, these folks respond to us at the drop of a hat. They are not paid by the department or by the city. We pay them with heaps of praise and a breakfast a couple of times a year, and other assorted awards presentations for them. These folks do an outstanding job for us. The phone rings at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, because we have a scene where we need traffic control help, and instead of occupying a post with a traffic deputy that could otherwise be doing other traffic enforcement or DUI enforcement in the city, those positions are staffed by our senior volunteers. We really, really appreciate those folks. If anyone's interested in that, you have to be at least 50 years of age, U.S. citizen or legal alien who has applied for citizenship, possess a California driver's license and auto insurance, have medical insurance, good moral character, and conviction of a felony is disqualifying, obviously. physically and emotionally able to perform duties in the position, and you must complete a background check and get through our academy. But if anyone has an interest, please reach out to the Sheriff's Department. We have positions available for you. Crime rate. This is a representation of the last 22 years in the city of Vista going back to 1995. As you can see, we've done a pretty good job in the city reducing the crime rate. Our numbers, our unofficial numbers, January through the end of June this year, we're down another 0.3%, down from 18.31 to 18%. I'm excited that the numbers are that low. I hope that we can get them lower, at least keep them at that level. It goes to show you the work that's being done by the staff to make to make Vista a safe community. And again, this is a historic low for us. Crime rate breakdowns. I went ahead and posted North County for you, a brief comparison of how Vista compares to other North County agencies. And the way the crime rate is factored out, you can see it's the mid-year crime rate of violent crimes, which we're at, our numbers in red down there at the bottom, 3.63, and this is per capita. Combined with the property crime rate, which is 14.68, which comes out to an 18.31. You can see how we rate regarding Carlsbad, Escondido, Oceanside, Del Mar. Obviously, other sheriff entities, Del Mar's high, but Encinitas, Poway, and San Marcos are all a little lower than we are. We'd love to get down to those numbers as well if we can. This is a visual representation of that number in comparison with all of the other locations in the county. It shows you we're right about the midway mark there, and you can see where we factor in relation to some of the local police departments that are below us on that chart. How do we do it? We use information-led policing strategies to target prolific offenders. We keep track of releases from jail. We monitor people that are on probation and parole. We monitor crime trends using our crime analysis folks. We monitor crime trends, and when we see that there's something that appears to be spiking, we look for who we believe may be responsible for those things. And if those people are on probation or parole, we pay them visits to make sure that they are complying with their terms and conditions of probation and or parole, and to remind them that we're there to make sure that they're not reoffending and committing crime again. If there are reasons to take people into custody because they're in violation of their terms and conditions or they have warrants for their arrest or those things, we absolutely take care of those issues when we contact those folks. But countywide, we've seen that using information-led policing has really benefited us when we go to combat crime. Talking about our workload, our calls for service continue to increase. These are representations going back to 2011. The dark brown in the bar chart there is the first half of the year, and the light tan is the second half of the year. Back in 2011, we were at about 29,000 calls for service. That number has remained about that until 2016, when we went up to about 30,000, almost 31,000 calls for service. Last year, we were at 32,600 calls for service. The first half of this year, we're already at 16,200, so we're well on our way to encompassing last year's number. And what does that mean? Those are literally calls that come into our dispatch center where we send deputies out to handle calls. You'll see where that makes a difference here when we get to deputy-initiated activity. Deputy-initiated activity is discretionary time that's used when deputies are not handling calls for service. When we don't have calls for service, we're able to go out and actually target problems in the community and do proactive policing. Get out and do those extra patrols in the neighborhoods that have requested it. Get to a lot of the things that we need to get to that aren't call-driven based. You can see that those numbers appear to be going down. When calls for service go up, deputies are tasked with calls for service, and they have less discretionary time to handle deputy-initiated activities. That's where it's really it's nice to have those COPS units and GET teams that are able to go out and actually do a lot of that initiated activity. But it doesn't always allow us to go out and do everything that we need to do. So I wanted to point those out. And the big thing that we're seeing now is that the mental health crisis and mental health related calls that are coming into us are starting to occupy a lot of our time, and it really cuts down on our deputy and initiated activity. We've talked here in the last month and a half about Tri-City and what's happening with their closure of their mental health facilities and how that may or may not impact us. I'm of the opinion, based on 29 and a half years of law enforcement, that is going to severely impact us. You can see on the chart here that over the last several fiscal years, our calls for service when it comes to mental health related calls is only going up. This last year, the chart on the left is actually a fiscal year breakdown, which is July to June, and then I have the specified PERT-related CAD entries for the calendar years, and you can see this year we're already approaching, we're going to be far above our number last year, which was about 750 calls. We're already at 430 calls, and that was as of mid-July. If and when Tri-City closes that intake, our deputies are going to have to, when they come into contact with somebody who is in a mental health crisis and we take custody of them for 5150, we have to get them to an intake center. The closest intake center for us is going to be Palomar Hospital. And when I looked at the time and distance it's going to take us, I just wanted to draw your attention to it. Palomar Hospital from our station is 22 miles round trip and takes about 40 minutes round trip drive time. And that's drive time alone. That doesn't count time that's actually spent at the facility waiting to be seen by the medical staff and have somebody accepted at the hospital. So sometimes that's as short as 15 minutes, sometimes that's as long as 5 hours. You will have deputies off the beat that will not be handling radio calls because they are with somebody who are waiting to get into the mental health system. Palomar is 22 miles away, 40-minute drive round trip. Pomerado is the next stop, 52 miles round trip, and about 80 minutes drive time round trip. County mental health is 76 miles round trip, and that's down in the sports arena area. We have been making runs down to those facilities to see how long it's going to take us as a practical matter. CMH is really, it's a little, the devil's in the details. It's a longer drive for us, but their program is a little easier for us to get people in a quicker amount of time. So now we're trying to see if, in fact, we lose Tri-City, how do we go forward and what is our best option? None of it is good. So it's important to realize that when we have deputies off the beat, and it's not like we take one person and nobody else can call for that type of call. If we get another call or a third call or a fourth call, we will have people stacked up leaving the city to take people to mental health intake. All right, so besides the bad news, I wanted to talk about our community interaction pieces. We do several things each year to interact with the community. There's the list there. You participate in a lot of those things with us, but I think it's important that the community realize that we do conduct outreach, and that is one of the huge pieces for us. The Vista Leadership Academy, the Junior Deputy Academy, Day with a Deputy, those things, we want the community to see what it is like on our side so they have an understanding of what we deal with on our side, and maybe they can understand a little better what's going on. But in addition to those things, outreach is very important to us. Our crime prevention folks go out and conduct many, many meetings. I won't even say conduct, we participate in. A lot of these meetings are driven by other entities, and we are simply a participant or a presenter. And I have two outstanding crime prevention specialists that love to go out and interact with the community and give them information to prevent them from becoming victims of crimes, give them tools and resources so they can better protect themselves against crime in the communities. Recently we had the vandalism series that was down in Shadow Ridge, and we went out and met with those communities and gave them some tools and some information to help them help us essentially with products that allow them to have surveillance at their residences that can help us when we go to do follow-up on those things. So we might be able to identify suspect information and go out and hold people accountable for those actions. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do. I wanted to back up a little bit to the issue with Tri-City Hospital.
Yes.
Because I have met with different people, including at the hospital and others in the mental health care profession throughout the county, not just here locally. And I have seen cases where we have somebody who's been called and they have a mental health problem or issue that has come up, and they need to go to the emergency room, which is where you would start for the 5150 process.
Yes.
And if there is not an intake center there or a dedicated wing like Tri-City had available at that particular facility, they are still admitted to that emergency room under the care of the emergency room physician, who has then called in a mental health professional. And then at that point, if that's the psychologist or the psychiatrist or whoever that mental health professional is that comes into the emergency room at that point deems that they do need to be admitted into an intake facility, they are then transported by another non-city, a private contract company. So everything that I have witnessed and everything that I have been told completely contradicts what you said. So can you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, I can only tell you that I've been told several things in the last 6 weeks as well. My hope is that it continues to function the way that you tell us that you've been told it's going to function, because I would love, as a law enforcement officer, when I contact somebody in the field who is in mental health distress and meets criteria for a 5150 commit, I take them into custody and I take them to an intake center, an LPS facility. When I'm told that Tri-City is getting out of the LPS business, what that means to me as a law enforcement officer is that I will no longer have access to take people there for that reason, for that commit. And I will have to take them to the nearest LPS facility, which is Palomar.
But
I don't know if
Tri-City-
that's actually going to happen or not.
Because I talked with Tri-City and they said that will not happen, that they will still be there for the intake and transport through private. You know, we've seen the ambulances on the road that are Metro or Rural or AMC or something that are not city paramedic units, and they use those transport services. So I have been assured by Tri-City that that will not be the case, that you do not actually have to drive them down to CMH or
I hope that
Scripps
is true.
Mercy or Edgemore.
That would be
So-
great if that continues to operate that way, because frankly, even that's a wait when we go over there, but it's literally right over the line in Oceanside. So if they've made a commitment to you, and they honor that commitment to you, that is terrific for us, because the last thing we want to do is drive at the closest 22 miles round trip to get those people into a facility.
And I will be actively keeping their feet to the fire on that one.
Thank you.
Because I do realize how important the mental health of our community is here in North County. And so that was a promise that was made to me, and I intend to make sure that they keep it.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Thank you so much for your report, and welcome to Vista and giving your report. I just have a question, and I think looking at the numbers, just kind of a question that popped into my head is, it looks like the calls have increased from 2011 to 2018, and also our mental health cases have increased from 574 to 749 through 2017, yet our crime rates decreased 6.3%. So it seems like we have contradictory numbers. It seems like there's a lot more calls and a lot more activity, but crime rates down. Is it because we're out superhero fighting
Calls for service don't dictate crime rate.
Okay.
We respond to lots of calls for service that don't actually result in crime.
Okay.
When we get a call of a disturbing the peace, A neighbor calls and says they're having a problem with a party down the street. Those don't all become reports that are reflected in crime stats. But that doesn't mean that we're not out spending a considerable amount of time on those types of calls. So, it's great. Trust me, I'd love to have twice as many calls for service and half the crime rate that we have now. I'd love to have 70,000 calls for service and a 9% crime rate. If that's the model and that's how it works, great.
I'm just wondering if it's like a change in culture or tolerance, or like why is it so much lower with more calls? Because the officers inevitably are the ones who make the decision on is it a crime or not, right?
Yes.
So they're the decisions that have been.
They evaluate the facts that are at the call. So yeah, it's the facts lead us to whether or not it's actually a crime. So
okay.
But yeah, it's we calls for service don't dictate crime rate.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
And Captain, with information-led policing, that has made a change too in how the deputies
certainly
react to calls.
We're able to. You can go out with a large net and try to catch fish, but if you know where the fish are at, you can go and catch the fish. And that is probably reducing it to a far too simplistic level, but the fact remains, studies have shown us that people that commit crime do reoffend, and not across the board, but when we have access to them through probation and or parole, we do maintain contact with those folks to ensure that they're complying with their conditions. Because studies show if they comply with their conditions and they continue to comply with their conditions, that they may not reoffend down the line. So we try to encourage folks to behave lawfully. And those that don't, we have other tools for. And, we were just talking about this the other day. It's not. It costs us time and effort to arrest everybody. You can't arrest yourself out of problems. So we see it with the homelessness problem in the city. We could certainly go down and arrest everybody down in the creek beds and take them in, and it can just be a revolving door. But we've seen that doesn't fix the problem. So what else can we do, and who else can we work with to fix the issues? And we're not perfect. We swing and we miss. But we've been very, very fortunate initially to start with on the homelessness issue with HHSA, but now more importantly, local nonprofit service providers, Exodus Recovery, the McAllister Institute. Those folks are wonderful, and working with them and establishing those partnerships help us to get beyond just the normal hook and book mentality.
Councilmember Franklin.
I think it occurred to me that the total number of calls for service is dependent upon the total quantity of population in the service area, which has continued to grow.
Yes.
And the crime rate statistic number is based on a number of crimes per 100,000?
Per capita, I believe it's per 1,000.
Per 1,000. So you have one number that's based on a growing population getting bigger, another one that's based on a per constant number. So per 1,000 people, or whatever metric, the incidence per capita is going down, even though population's growing. Therefore, total number of calls are going up. That may be some of the number, right?
It could be, yes. And it's interesting. We talk about the number of 18, and that's using the last reported population. We have more people here than we did during that number. So that number is actually probably lower, but we won't get that until next year. It's just kind of a catch up. But yeah, that's exactly what
calls for service is going to track with population known or unknown.
Yes, that'd be my expectation.
Yeah, I also met with the administrators at Tri-City, and I heard different things. It sounded to me like they were packing up and going out of business. I'm glad to hear you, Councilwoman Rigby, got a different answer. It seems like it would behoove us, since it's such an important issue, maybe to write a letter as a city. Maybe the mayor would sign a letter and ask them to commit to a policy, because we need to be vocal in their policy making and hold their feet to the fire with voters. If they're not,
we actually did write a letter.
We already did. That's
we
right.
already did.
Yeah. Okay.
And just to clarify, They did say that they don't intend to rebuild that wing, but they are still there for emergency intake. So that we would not have to have our sheriff's deputies, because that was one of the first questions I had. So there were two different things.
Now, I couldn't remember, did our letter request a statement of policy in response, or did...
I don't know that we requested a statement of policy.
I wonder...
I don't remember that.
I don't think it
Yeah, if we didn't do that, maybe that's what we want to do, is request a statement of policy. That way, we have an agreement
In writing.
about what services are
Yeah,
available.
get it in writing.
It was more of a letter of disappointment,
Right.
and how it would affect services from a fire and police perspective.
Sounds like there might be support to ask them to publicly state their policy, and I think they owe that to the community to publicly state what their policy is, because it is a really important issue. Captain, I just wanted to say, I just wanted to second the welcome to Vista. Had an opportunity to sit down and visit with you. I appreciate your commitment to the public safety of Vista, and to work with us here on issues large and small.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your report. And
I'm happy to be here
welcome.
with you.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for our recent meeting.
Yes.
And I'm really impressed with the numbers. I thank you for doing that and making some adjustments to those. That's exactly what I was looking for. The deputy-initiated activity, that concerns me, and obviously it sounds like it concerns you as
It
well.
does.
That has gone down from 2011 to 2017. I don't remember what you said about the asterisk, if you covered that.
No,
There's an
it's
asterisk
not.
there?
It's not a full year. I
Not a
believe.
complete?
Yeah,
Okay.
not a complete. That's only half the year.
Either way, the trend is downward. So is that just because of...
We're actually seeing that department-wide, and so I can tell you that at a command level, we do meet once a month, and this has been a topic of discussion. And deputy-initiated activity is a deputy-initiated activity is only as good as the thought behind it. I can hop in a car and go write 15 parking tickets around the corner right now and say I have 15 deputy-initiated activities, and that's not what we're after. We want to make sure that they're quality deputy-initiated activities, and so we've seen that downward trend. And although I personally believe, and several others do, that there's definitely a correlation between calls for service and a decline in deputy-initiated activities. If you have a 12-and-a-half-hour shift and during that 12-and-a-half-hour shift, you're only not on a call for less than an hour or two. And in addition to being at the call for service, you're also coming back and writing a report based on all of the things that you've handled. There's a concern there, and because we don't want proactive policing to disappear. We do not want to be a purely reactive force. We need to be proactive. We need to be out, and some of that deputy-initiated activity is in community relations too. You're out and you're at Bringle Terrace Park, walking through the park to ensure that the parks are safe. You're contacting folks, talking to folks, finding out what's going on, what they're seeing, what they're hearing. You want people to reach out to you and have those relationships with you, and that's a huge part of the DIAs as well. So that is an issue for us. We are looking at those things, and we're in a mode where we are constantly reminding the guys, hey, deputy-initiated activities are important as well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you. I also wanted to say welcome, although it doesn't seem welcome because we've had so many conversations. It just seems like you've been here forever already.
It does.
But and I appreciated when we met, and to follow up on the deputy mayor's comment, I appreciated hearing what your vision, because you might recall that was one of the first questions I asked you.
Mm-hmm.
What is your vision for policing in Vista, and how are you going to get there? And I appreciated what you had to say. So thank you, and thank you for such a comprehensive report. I see our numbers are going in the right direction, and I'm very happy for that. And I also wanted to say a great job to your crew that was out at National Night Out last week. I did go over there for quite a long time and hung out with all the different groups that were there. And as always, they did a great job with their community relations and the kids and the pictures. And I think we have some future deputies in our midst.
Yeah.
So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks. It's always nice to go to those and have those one-on-one conversations with the community members.
Right.
And it was very, very enjoyable for us too.
Right. The little guys coming coming out in their little uniforms. That's always a hoot. So thank you.
Councilmember Franklin.
Thank you. Captain, talking about the deputy-initiated activities and the proactive policing, if the council was to take action to increase the number of deputies under your command, do you think that would make it possible to increase the number of deputy-initiated actions?
I think it would. You know, the simple matter is if you have additional folks here you have additional staff time. And if you have additional staff time with a constant number, we're going to have more free time to do some of those things. But I know we've talked about some of the neighborhoods in the south end that feel that they don't see deputies enough. And, you know, I'm encouraging those deputies that work on those beats to actually document the fact that they're down in those beats with extra patrols and that type of thing. The department doesn't really like to look at extra patrols because extra patrols can simply be a deputy driving through a community or a neighborhood and hitting a button saying, I'm here. But that's important to me because I want to be able to tell you that, yes, there are deputies in those communities. I know there are deputies in those communities. We have deputies in those communities that also do respond to other areas of the community when calls for service dictate. But when those calls aren't happening, those deputies are in those neighborhoods. But I want to make sure that when your constituents come to you and ask you those questions, that I'm able to give you those answers.
You think adding additional officers would help us continue to reduce crime here in the city?
I don't think that it'd make the crime rate go up.
Very good. Thanks, Captain.
Sure.
Thank you, Captain. It looks like we all met with you, so welcome to Vista. We're happy to have you here, and thanks for coming, and thanks for your presentation tonight. We appreciate it. That brings us to our consent calendar. The following recommendations are on the consent calendar. The recommendations on the consent calendar will be enacted in one motion unless an item is removed from the calendar. Any member of the public can remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to the clerk's secretary. Items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the consent calendar. And we have items C1 through C14, 14 items this evening. And so do I have any that are pulled from the... I don't have any that are pulled by the public. Does anybody want to pull one from here? And I see Councilmember Rigby.
I'm going to pull C8, please.
Okay. And Councilmember Green.
I'd like to pull C4 and C10, please.
And with that, I would move that we approve the balance of the consent calendar.
Okay, so...
I'll second that.
So I have a motion and a second. So anyone... Just hold on. We have to get our...
Kathy, the vote.
We have to vote. We have to have our voting... That motion passes unanimously. So with that, we will go to item C4, appointments to fill unscheduled vacancies. And Councilmember Green, you pulled that. So
yeah, I just wanted to, number one, thank everybody who applied. We had tons of applications. It was a 2-day process. I think we sat through 8 hours or more of interviews. And I did notice that Lena Boulay, my new Parks and Rec commissioner, is sitting there in the audience. So I just wanted to acknowledge her and thank her for coming. And with that, I would move to approve this item as presented on the consent calendar.
do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Please cast your votes. That motion passes unanimously. So the next one will be item number C8, no parking on Emerald Drive between Thomas Street and was it? Gelbar. I was going to say that, but I wasn't sure I pronounced it right. So,
Mayor, we have our city engineer, Greg Mayer, our traffic engineer, Sam Hassanen, that could provide a report if the council would prefer.
Councilmember Rigby, would you like a report?
I don't think that I necessarily need a report on this. I was in attendance at the town hall meeting that we had over in the neighborhood on Emerald to talk with the community about what the concerns were on Emerald. And there were a lot of concerns over there, rightfully so. There are a lot of things that we can do better in that neighborhood as far as traffic control and pedestrian safety particularly. And so when I look at this agenda item, I see only a piece of what we need to do in that neighborhood. And I don't want to do this piecemeal. I would like to see the comprehensive plan of what we're going to do to fix the problems that we've already identified through our community outreach. And so I would like to see everything or most of everything together so that we can see how they marry up with each other, because there will be different elements to this process or to what we have identified that we need to do there. So, and what we're doing here in this one block between Thomas and Galbar, there are other blocks going down the road, and if we do this here, you're going to be getting calls and questions and wanting to do this down the road. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of this particular move at all, but I see that there are other things that we need to be doing here in all total. So I don't want to see us do it piecemeal. I would like us to come back with a plan of what we're going to do regarding the pedestrian crossings, regarding the traffic control, et cetera, as one plan that we can look at. So like the Emerald Drive master plan, instead of doing it this way. So I am not in favor of this particular agenda item at this time. So those are my comments.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that you did and the community meetings. I'm just not in favor of this right now, but thank you.
And I don't have a problem with it because I think it's a site issue at these streets right here. It's a site issue pulling out of those, and so it's a safety issue to me, and so I don't have a problem with that. So,
well, my concern with that is, and I drive this all the time, if it's a site issue here, it's going to be a site issue on other areas as well, and we're just going to be asked to keep moving it down the road. Well, and so if we're going to do that, we need to come back with a comprehensive plan to do it all together. And I
agree with you on that, but for now, I'm going to make it safe here. So I'll start there, and then they can bring us back a plan. So, Councilmember Franklin.
I'd like to hear a little bit of a staff report, particularly with regard to the safety concern, and also how did this come about? What was the community input, if any? I don't see any here in the report.
So this came up at one of the Emerald Drive corridor study community workshops. So something like this is we look at kind of an immediate safety issue that is brought to our attention, and it's something that we think we should address, aside from the overall plan that we came up with. And we did come up with a proposal for the stretch of Emerald from from Date Street to Olive Avenue, kind of a more longer term, more involved, kind of costly type solution. But this is the kind of thing that, when is brought to our attention, and it was brought to our attention at one of the workshops, this is the kind of thing that we normally react to immediately, we evaluate. And in this case, we found, we measured the side distance, we found it to be approximately 115 feet, and based on the speed on Emerald Drive, required side distance is about 300 feet. So it was deficient. It was less than half of what it should be.
That was an earthquake. Yeah.
That's the third one today.
Oh. Sorry, Sam.
Sorry, Sam.
Great presentation, Sam.
I felt something, but I didn't realize it was an earthquake.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So again, this is the kind of thing that we look at that we can easily address just with red curb versus the kind of the overall big solution for the street. And we react to, and like I said, we measured the side distance to be substantially deficient, and it could be addressed with a simple solution of red curb, and that's why we brought this forward separately versus the overall plan that actually we did come up with as a result of that corridor study that we conducted.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to have a bigger and better plan to view, but I think at the moment, I'm guessing that the red curb is part of that solution, at least temporarily, and we can always take the red curb off if that doesn't fit into the bigger picture. It's an easy fix for now, keeps people safe, and if things change in the future, we can remove the red curb if it's necessary. I make a motion to approve C8 as proposed.
I'll second your motion. Councilmember Rigby?
Well, then I have a question. If it's a site issue and you're doing the red curb only between Thomas and Galbar, and you said it was a site issue of people coming out from Thomas Street to turn left onto Emerald, Why are we not continuing the red curb down Emerald past Galbar, so when they come off of Galbar, they're not having the same issue when they're turning left? So it should just keep going on down the road, and it doesn't.
So we do these on a request basis. That's a lot of our work when it comes to specific locations is really kind of request or complaint driven. We can certainly look at other intersections, but normally we don't. Normally we just look at, kind of the one issue that is brought up,
So you got this complaint or this request from someone over here, and we've identified that, yes, that's actually probably a very good idea.
Yes, absolutely.
So as a city, can we not be proactive and continue it down the road? Because once you do this, you're going to be getting the calls from other people down Galbar.
Yeah, and
So I think if we're going to do this and we want to be proactive in our safety, just do it all the way down the road.
Well, we can look at every specific intersection, measure the side distance, and see what amount of red curb. Every intersection is unique, so every intersection would have to be looked at specifically.
Have we done that yet?
We have not.
With this?
We can do that.
Okay.
Councilmember Franklin?
So, Councilwoman Rugby, are you satisfied on this action, or are you still opposed to it?
I mean, I'm not opposed to the red curb if it's a safety thing, and I understand that. So I'm not opposed to this particular, and I don't think it should just be this one block. We're going to get calls, and we should, if it's a safety issue, we should be proactive and do what we can without having to be asked. As I think that should just be how we work. But my issue particularly is the overall plan for this area. We had some significant other concerns here, and that I have heard from constituents, and this is my district and my neighborhood, and a lot of it had to do with pedestrian crossing and traffic flow, et cetera. So I would like to see how all of this marries up together, all these little things. And sometimes, I'm not saying that this project is one of them, but we have seen multiple times in the city where we want to do a bunch of things in one area, and we do it piecemeal only to find out that maybe they didn't really all work so well together, and we have to tweak them. So I would like us to look at what we got from the community, what we have investigated, and what we are wanting to do here in this area, which I think the primary concerns that I heard were getting the kids across the street for the school and the pedestrian crossings, and then the speed of the traffic and the traffic flow. So I would like to see what are the things that we're doing in those areas all together in this neighborhood before we just start piecemealing things together as we are asked or as complaints come in. I would like to see us be a little bit more proactive than that.
And we have developed, as a result of that effort, we have developed 3 alternatives, and a preferred alternative actually emerged based on the second community workshop. So we do have an extensive proposal for that whole stretch, but it is extensive, it's long-term, it's costly. So that's why when something like this comes up, that's location-specific and can be addressed with something just as simple as red curb, we do react to it more immediately, since it's not something we want to wait until it could be years, to implement, the overall more costly solution. So this is reactive, but just because it's a simple solution that we could do, and we're in a way on the record being asked to look at it.
Well, so what I guess where I could go tonight and is if we go ahead and do the study for further down the road, and if we see that, yes, it needs to be done like this tiny space here is being done, we need to take pro-action and get it done without having somebody complain to us.
Yeah, we could look at the other intersections for simple solutions like that.
If I can put that in with your motion, Deputy Mayor, that we have the study or...
So Jonathan is just down the street from that. So next street down?
Several intersections. This stretch of Emerald between Dade and Olive has probably 10 intersections or so, maybe a couple more.
Because that would be the only other intersection I think that would be concern, because it's got the most traffic, more than these 2 streets do.
Yeah, so Jonathan and Timothy/Lewis, those are 2 that are busier.
Lewis is busy, yeah.
Yeah.
Timothy's the one I get the complaints about.
So what was your request? To just look at?
Well, because he said that Sam had said we haven't looked at doing the red curb down here, and we need to look at it, measure it, do the site investigation. So I'm just saying, yes, let's include that in this motion so that we can be proactive in getting the rest of the street red curbed and not waiting for it to come back to us
I can agree to that.
block by it, at a time.
That's fine. I can agree to that.
Thank you.
Okay, my second too.
I don't think Councilman Franklin was finished. I usurped his time.
No, I that's your neighborhood. You're in it every day. I wanted to understand what your position on it was. I give great deference to those of us that have a familiarity with a particular part of the neighborhood. So I'm glad we've got your support. Let's move.
So with that, I'm good. But I'm waiting to see all the rest of it happen.
And that Emerald, that is a problem over there. I mean, my granddaughter, I pick her up and take her to school a lot of times at Tri-City Christian. Oh my gosh, the traffic in the morning, and it's all the way down that street. So, and I come out those streets. I go the back way and come out those streets sometimes. So it's a problem. So hopefully we can do the whole street at some point. So with that, we have a motion and a second. So we'll cast our votes.
Thank you. And thank you.
That motion passes unanimously. So the next thing, we're going to pull item C10, which is a traffic signal interconnect and upgrade south of SR 78. And I know that Joe, I was going to pull that, Joe, also. That's the installation of a fiber optic traffic signal interconnect for 48 traffic signals, 16 closed-circuit TV monitoring devices, controllers, and related communication equipment, which people are going to love. So I'll leave it to you.
I think you said it best, actually, and that was my thing. I just wanted to make sure the city knows that, hey, the south half of our city, yes. It's not the north half yet, so staff, we're pounding on you for that north half. We're all sitting at those stoplights way too long, and 5 operating systems for what should be able to run on one is real frustrating for all of us who are sitting in traffic, but this is a victory. And
signals.
Exactly. And the other thing I wanted to make sure they know is we did reject the bid back in May, but staff was able to save us 70 to 120,000, depending on which number you were looking at. But it was a good amount of money for taxpayers, which will allow us to do better things for our community. So thank you, staff, for saving us money, and thank you for pushing this to as soon as possible and getting it done, because it's something that we're all going to feel and notice. So thank you.
And I make a motion to to approve of this.
I would second
Councilman
that
Franklin,
motion.
I'm sorry. I thought you were left from the last time.
Yeah, I would second that motion. I also wanted to support and compliment staff for their work on this. On behalf of the people I represent in South Vista, we are very grateful to see this project come to fruition, and we're very hopeful that it will lead to getting home safer and faster and more time with their families. So thanks for the good work, and we look forward to seeing it implemented.
Thank you. So with that, we'll go on to our discussion items. So we have 2 discussion. We're not? Oh, we got to vote. Oh, I haven't been here we were on vacation for a long time. That motion passes unanimously. And we were dark in July, so now I have to learn how to do this meeting again. So, okay, now discussion. There are 2 discussion items this evening, and the first one is our Central Vista Business Improvement District, our 4th quarter update. And our Economic Development Director, Kevin Ham, is going to introduce the item.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm Kevin Ham, Director of Economic Development, and giving the presentation this evening is Michael Luna, our Economic Development Specialist.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. In June 2017, the City Council approved a contract with the Vista Village Business Association, known as the VVBA, to administer the Central Vista Business Improvement District, known as the CVBID. At that time, the City Council requested regular updates from the VVBA on the status of the administration of the work plan. This report covers the entire fiscal year, which is July 2017 through June 2018. The City is in receipt of the 4th quarter CVBID work plan update, which has been approved by the CVBID Advisory Board on July 25th of this year. The work plan update details the VVBA activities for both the CVBID funded items and those activities funded by VVBA revenues. Status updates on the progress of each activity are included as well. City staff continues to work with the VVBA to ensure proper reporting and compliance with the administration of the agreement. Kevin Ham and I are here to answer any of your questions, but at this time I would like to introduce Neil Schaefer, the president of the VVBA Board of Directors. Neil?
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you all for having us. I am here also with our Secretary-Treasurer, Tracy Lawson, who will support me in case you have any questions that I can't answer. I'm sure she can. So the CVBID work plan has, gosh, I'm probably even going to get this wrong, I believe 6 goals. And we're going to go at them one by one here. The first goal is the general promotion of business activities. And as I guess I should reiterate, as Kevin and Michael said, this is kind of a review of our work plan goals from the last fiscal year. And I'll, of course, welcome any questions at the end or during, up to you, I guess. This goal, first work plan goal, covered kind of these 6 items here: the annual elections, the board retreat, member services, social media website, Main Street program, and our annual meeting. All of these things were successfully handled. I especially want to highlight a couple of them, particularly the board retreat, which I think was especially successful this year in, I would say, reestablishing who we are, what our goals are, setting a more positive and productive tone for the next fiscal year. We worked with Tess Sanger of the city of San Marcos to help flesh out those goals and really set kind of concrete action items for this current fiscal year. The website is another significant upgrade, I guess, that was initiated in the last fiscal year. We've contracted with Geocentric, a company that specializes in business district, city, and neighborhood websites. You see a few examples up there, including Little Italy, downtown Rochester, downtown Norfolk, various neighborhoods, places like Denver, Washington, D.C., neighborhoods, things like that. And that's going to be such a significant upgrade over what is currently offered. It's going to boost the visibility of our businesses and be a lot more user-friendly, mobile-friendly, and we'll really be able to integrate so much more user kind of adaptability that I think it's going to be a significant upgrade. And I think just that on its own is going to show concrete benefit for our businesses. We hope to also launch a marketing campaign in conjunction with that. I think we'll see really positive results. I'll move on to the next goal. Work plan goal 2 is our promotion of public events. We had a handful of events in the last fiscal year, Family Fun Day, and these are listed chronologically, not by the order in the fiscal year, but I guess I'll list them by that. Rod Run began the fiscal year last year, followed by Vista Night Out, Winterfest in December, our Family Fun Day in February. Vista Vintage Makers Market had 2 occurrences in the last fiscal year, and then we finished the fiscal year with a very successful Taste of Vista, which I highlighted during my last visit here. The Family Fun Day and the Vista Night Out, you see those asterisks, those designate them as goodwill events. They are not those that are expected or intended to be really big revenue events, though I believe one of them did break even, or did actually make some money, which was a nice thing. I think the Taste of Vista is, as I mentioned last time, and I want to highlight it again here, the significant increase in our revenue I think we're going to see throughout a lot of our events. Just the improvement in the way that event was run, the processes that were implemented, and the purchase of various items to help facilitate a successful event. I think was really the first run of our kind of new processes, as I said, and I think that increased revenue is a real reflection of that, and I think we will see continued success by really modernizing the way we run events. It hasn't always been like that in the past. And I think we will see continued growth in the coming fiscal year. Work Plan Goal 3 is decoration of public places, and I'll highlight a couple items here, and that's the doggy stations under the beautification category. Those have since been removed. We'd worked with the city on that. Those lasted for a year. It's something we may re-explore to try to maintain, that kind of, that presence downtown. I think it would be beneficial and something I would like to re-explore. And then the mural art. We contributed $5,000 from our NRP grant to the Vista Art Foundation for the creation of that beautiful mural that you see represented on the screen there. Work Plan Goal 4 is the furnishing of music for public places and events, and we saw quite a bit of that last year, obviously at all of our events, either live music or DJs, and that's something I think we'll see even more of in the downtown Vista this current fiscal year, as we look to expand and hold more First Friday kind of events. Really let the community know that First Fridays of each month are going to really be a time for gathering in the business improvement district, not just in the old Main Street area, but throughout the business improvement district. And we want to see, we're working with our members to create a program that will see them maybe stay open later, offer deals, and also have live music to really make it a kind of a festive beginning of each month. Work Plan Goal 5, the acquisition, construction, installation, and/or maintenance section of our work plan. And this is where we see our NRP grant money and how it was applied. I mentioned the mural and the dog waste bag stations. Both of those were funded by our NRP grant, as was the holiday lighting and decorations under the $15,000 NRP grant. And then the $20,000 NRP grant really helped for a lot of those upgrades I mentioned in regards to event management. You see the list of walkie-talkie systems, PAs, and other equipment. And then, of course, you see the website mentioned, and that will be a significant upgrade down the line when we get that launched. We hope to get that launched within the next few months. We are voting on a new logo in the coming meetings. And then finally, Work Plan Goal 6, operating activities, which encompasses the administrative costs, overhead, personnel, and the shared bin program and things of that nature. I won't get too specific on that, but those are the numbers for each of those categories for that work plan goal. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention also from our NRP grant, and this isn't, this shouldn't be a pat on the back kind of moment because it's not, but this was the first year also that we've spent all of our NRP grant money. And as I said, we should do that, should have already happened, but I think it's a baby step forward that I think is really indicative of how the present iteration of the VVBA board is really committed to really using its resources in the most productive fashion and making sure that our constituents see the benefit from our presence and our service to them. Any questions from council?
Do I have any questions? I have one speaker. I have a speaker first. Okay, Sarah Spinks. And if you want to stick around, then they might have questions for you after.
Good evening. I just wanted to make a correction. The Vista Art Foundation was not involved in the mural. It was the Back Fence Society, but I wanted to say thank you very much to the VVBA for helping secure that grant and getting that beautiful mural painted. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Green.
All right. Thank you so much for your reporting. I really appreciate it. I am the council member assigned to the VVBA, so I've been sitting in on a lot of meetings for the past year. I've seen the transition. I've seen the business owners really take hold and start working and really trying to implement technology and make some changes. I'm a little concerned just moving forward with things that are going on in the downtown, another question that I had before I get on with that was, in your work plan goal number 6, your operating activities, you have personnel listed again at $76,000. And I know that we recently just got rid of a executive director because the cost was eating up a lot of the money that we were receiving. And I know we haven't hired a new executive director, and I understand you have a lot of stuff you want to do, but with all you guys owning businesses and things going on, my question is, who's going to do that, and what price is it going to be, and are we going to run into the same problems that we ran into before if we have that salary at $76,000 again, and our CVBD funds are only 50 some odd thousand, and we're not generating revenues that we plan on generating? We're going to keep having to ask for more money and put the city out per se. So as a guy who's just kind of been a fly on the wall, when I look at the work plan goal, I would think that would need to be a lot less money per se to make a significant change in what the end result has been for all these years. And if you've already hired an executive director, please let us know.
Well, I would certainly let you know. And that covers, contractors, are the year-end review, things of that nature. There are still costs, and that is a number I would like to see trimmed where we can. Going without an ED is not a permanent setup. I think it is our intention to proceed with finding support on an either full-time or part-time basis. I don't have a set timeline for you, but within the not too distant future. Once again, I don't know exactly what that means, but that is the intent of the board. I think the decision to remove the ED position was in large part to kind of help restabilize things on a more short-term basis so that we could reallocate those immediate funds to see and maximize that benefit. Things like the website and marketing campaign. I know we'd like to look into bringing someone in to really support those marketing efforts and efforts surrounding marketing and events, because that's where so much of the time and energy of our board is spent handling a lot of those related things, where I think that we would see the biggest benefit from looking in that direction for support. Now, I wish I had more concrete answers about, when we might hire someone or who that person might be. I understand the concerns about costs and modest revenue growth over the past years. It's something we're certainly mindful of. We aren't unaware of that, I guess I can say.
All right, and that's my thing, is I know that a lot of business owners have been acting as high-capacity volunteers, and at some point in time, that bites into your back pocket. And as the city, we want to make sure that area is, successful, and that our money is being spent as effectively as possible.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that you're doing that. The other thing is that I was looking at is, it looked like with your NRP grant, you bought like a PA system and some walkie-talkies and things. Since we've been funding this organization since 1995, I think, based off the information, I'm wondering, is there any list that you could provide us of inventory that's been purchased over the past 23 some odd years? I mean, I'm assuming that you've had events with PA systems before. Are we having to repurchase items every year? I mean, like what type of assets have you acquired? I mean, I like the work plan goals, but you have to realize that the management and the authority has been changing every single year, and we get a lot of hope,
Yep.
And I love hope, but at the same token, I need to make sure that the money is applied to the downtown businesses, and that I'm not making you work 40 hours a week to put together a volunteer, event to get somebody in your door. If we can spend that money more effectively to make your businesses be successful, as the city, that's what we want to do. We're excited to have business owners that want to do it, but we do need to make sure that there's some accountability per se, and more than hope, and actual solid plans. So I don't mean to drill you real hard, but just looking at all this stuff, for me, it's a concern. And moving forward, I know we signed a 1-year contract, and we're going to come back again for a contract, and there might be more funds needed and things. And in order for that to all happen, there's a lot of questions that I'm sure I have, and I know my council may have, in order to be right there with you on your side moving forward, because there's been a lot of turnover and a lot of, just not positivity per se out of this. So I really want to get it more on the positive side per se, with more solid answers. So.
No, and I appreciate being grilled. I mean, that's what we're here for, and I want to I want the council to be confident in our actions. You know, a lot of the actions we've had to take over the last 8 months are actions we shouldn't have had to take. It's stuff that should have been done over the last couple of decades, quite frankly. And I think we are building the processes. And, you know, let me back up. You know, when you have muscle memory perhaps in the wrong or inefficient direction for many years, it's hard to unwind that. And I think what we're doing over the last few months, over the last 8 months, is really building that positive muscle memory and trying to, you know, reteach ourselves how to do things. You know, that's something I've been trying to do as I become more active. You know, every day I'm a lawyer, so I see and advise clients about how to operate within the bounds of the law and what rules they have to follow. I've been trying to apply that to my job here as president of the board. As for the assets, we know what we have, and we can get you a list. That's no problem. You know, that's no problem. We can absolutely do that. But we know what we have and stored in our office.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead.
Tracy, you introduce yourself.
Hi, Tracy Losslin. I'm the secretary for the VVBA. But to your question about what we have in the office, and Neil said we can get you a list, but one thing that we're really proud of with this NRP grant, and it's just getting us, you know, to where we want to be, is we are now acquiring equipment to host these events. So when you see walkie-talkies and tents and you know, the credit card swipers, in the past we've had to rent all of this equipment, which is costly. And you know, we've worked with the city on how do we set ourselves up so if we want to have an event, we have all of the tools available for us. We're not renting all of this stuff. It's there. We've even worked with the chamber to, you know, talk to them about, you know, if we get some big equipment, some barricades, things like that, can we work with the chamber to store these? And then we'll partner with the chamber and they can use some of these, some of the equipment that we've acquired too. So again, we're setting ourselves up for success and to be able to hold some really stellar events. And then just to go back to the question about the personnel. So that was last year, and that's, you know, one of the reasons that we took that step, and we wanted to, you know, put the money where it really needed to be. And as far as having an event, we've really changed our model where we are building cost into the event to pay for an event coordinator instead of using office personnel like an ED to run these events. We can build into the events a professional event coordinator to hold these events, again, to make them even bigger and better and have monthly events. If Oceanside can have a weekly event, why can't Vista have a monthly? And then we'll just go from there. So we're working in that cost into other events and other programs, and that's why you don't see, and you know, that's why we really haven't been pushing like, oh, we have to have an ED, because we're making progress without that position and producing our reports on time and things like that. So,
of course. So your work plan goal 6 with a $76,000 personnel.
Next year.
The work plan goal is going to be a lot less per se.
Website,
okay.
Things that benefit
cool,
the business.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Franklin.
I just wanted to say I agree with some of the concerns, but I don't think it goes without saying that you're all volunteers, those of you who are currently on the board and those who have served on the board, and you all deserve our gratitude for the work that you're doing to serve our city and our community and the business community. I just want to say thanks for your time and your love of Vista and the work that you're doing. We appreciate it.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Councilman Franklin said. It's difficult. You guys all run businesses, and it cuts into your business. So I appreciate what you do for our downtown. And I believe, since I've been on council, that the VVBA has gotten a lot more efficient, and the events have become a lot more, well, they're better events, and they're better attended. So I appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the good work.
I'll say it's not always comfortable, but, you know, it really is a pleasure to do it. You know, growing up, at least partially in North County and now living in North County, it's important to me that we see all of North County succeed. And Vista is a special community and a big part of that. And I care very deeply about seeing this organization succeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I think this is just a report and file. I don't think we have.
Thank you.
But thank you so much to all of you for volunteering your time. Okay, so moving on to our second discussion item, which is D2. It's staffing options for patrolling parks and open space. And our Assistant City Manager, Ali Zimmerman, is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is a follow-up to two new positions that were included in the fiscal year 18-19 operating budget. Based on the direction we see from the City Council when we were preparing the budget, staff did include the staffing and associated costs to add two new positions to our Code Enforcement Division to patrol parks and open space. And you asked for more information about potentially what those positions would do and how it would work. That's what this report is. I would like to officially introduce you to our new Code Enforcement Manager, Jess Farrell. She's been with the city for a number of years, but was recently promoted with the retirement of the incumbent. And so Jess will be providing the staff report.
All right, there we go. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of some of the anticipated duties for these positions, as well as some of the expectations we may all have. These positions will be designated solely to the parks to proactively or reactively address posted or non-posted municipal codes for matters such as dogs off leash, camping in the parks, illegal vendors, abandoned vehicles. Additional anticipated duties could include notifying Public Works and Parks and Recreation of any blight or hazardous conditions such as overgrowth, trash, or graffiti. They will also be expected to work in conjunction with the Humane Society to address dog-related concerns, as well as contact the Sheriff's Office if there's any observed, suspicious, or dangerous or hazardous activity, such as drug offenses or violent behaviors. All right. The predominant areas for patrol, based upon my experience, would be Bub Williamson, where there's many reports of dogs off leash, Buena Vista and South Buena Vista parks for off leash violations, Bringle Terrace for transient related activity, Wildwood Park for transient related activity as well as trash, skate parks for vandalism and trash, sports complex for illegal vendors, or Louis Duran Park for illegal vendors.
And we're going to pause at this time to see if you have any questions. And as identified in the staff report, the two positions would be focused primarily on these areas. The goal would be to have their time overlap so that they're both working the weekend, and then it's a little bit less so during the week when we have our regular duty officers on board. And so with these priority areas, what you would see with any other available time is random patrols in our other parks and open spaces. And if there are any questions, we'll take them before we move on.
Councilmember Franklin, I know we lost our screens again here.
You talked about one of the roles being transient enforcement.
Is your mic on?
No, and I can't hear you.
We don't have screens down.
What is, because I've been with the members of the cops team, the sheriff's deputies cops team, when they approach transients, homeless individuals, and I understand what the approach is there. The sheriff's Captain Ryler Sam talked about it a little bit this evening. What is the code enforcement officer's approach, and how does it differ from that of the cops deputy? Is this really something that we're going to have a code enforcement employee engage in?
Not necessarily. I'm aware of your participation with the sheriff's office, where you did the ride along and you had an opportunity to see some of the dangerous sides of that job. With the code enforcement realm, it's not exactly the same. We do make contact with transients on occasion. However, we make sure we keep a safe distance so that way we have the availability to leave. We are not armed with weapons, so that's why I had noted that we would be working in conjunction with the sheriff's department.
So you'll notify the cops team deputies whenever you come into, or when you want to observe an individual and call for them to respond?
Correct.
Okay. I appreciate that very much. I implore those of you on the council to reconsider this decision. When we had our official goal-making session, we made it an official goal of the city to employ more deputies. The captain's report tonight underscores the fact that calls for service are on the increase. Recently, I've had the distinct pleasure of knocking on 700 doors of my neighbors, and I've talked to many of them about this issue, and they don't understand, and I think it's a pretty plain issue. It's the choices between one sheriff's deputy or two park rangers, and when I explain to them the park rangers are not law enforcement officers, they are code enforcement, but they're not armed, they don't have a badge, they're not a sworn officer, they tell me that they don't want an observe and report position, they want a sheriff's deputy. We have a meaningful opportunity after having identified a majority of the council that this was an official policy objective of the city to hire more deputies. We now have the opportunity in our hand right now to hire one more deputy on a go-forward basis, which sounds like a small thing. It's a huge commitment, and it is my genuine sense that there is not an outpouring of desire from our citizens in Vista to have code enforcement in the parks as a higher priority than adding more sheriff's deputies. And so I beseech you to reconsider this decision. This is an opportunity that doesn't come around easily. We've been discussing where we could find savings for other priorities, and we know there are very few, there's very little fat in our budget. Whenever we look to find a source of funding for something that we know is a priority, we all struggle to identify what we're going to cut. We have identified this funding, and the staff brought this funding specifically in response to the council's direction to find money to hire more deputies. So I'll suspend my remarks for the moment, but I truly hope that you'll have a change of heart and join me in adding a sworn sheriff's deputy to our streets in a patrol car.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the presentation that our sheriff's captain had did point out some interesting numbers, particularly the initiated activities by deputies. As far as hours worked, we're talking about how many hours would if we had two rangers or code enforcement officers dedicated to these areas that you've got here set aside. I mean, are we looking at 40 hours a week? I'm trying to figure out, what would we gain by using two rangers versus a sheriff deputy, and how many hours are we going to get out of a sheriff's deputy a week?
We're looking at a staggered schedule of 7 days a week for 40 hours per officer or ranger.
What times of the day?
So these would be working daytime shifts, given the nature of the duties and the fact that we have sheriff's deputies on 24/7. When we did the review of calls, the recommendation would be that these would work daytime shifts, given especially that they're working on their own and would be kind of in areas potentially by themselves. So it would be daytime hours. Based on a review of the calls, the recommended schedule would have the positions doubled up for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then have overlapping weekday schedules. Sheriff's deputies work, I believe, 12-hour shifts, so it's a little bit different. If you're talking about a special purpose officer, it may be more of a different schedule, but the patrol teams work, I believe, 12-hour shifts.
So when you say special patrol, is that like cops?
The cops team aren't on the same type of shift schedule as, for example, patrol or traffic. But they do work 40 hours, or they work a full-time schedule.
And that's during the day, right?
It depends on the schedule. For example, we have cops deputies here now, so.
So, I mean, it sounds like cops would be the other alternative, a cops deputy.
When we made the initial recommendation for the use of the funds, it was to add a cops deputy, because in order to add a full complement of patrol or traffic, you need more than one position because of the shift change. Otherwise, you would be off balance for a portion of the day or week. So, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Now, when we brought this before, I think the reason why we said we wanted the, park enforcement officers, all right, I think the reason why we said we wanted those was because our community takes their parks so seriously. And some of the most controversial issues that we've had up here as council members was their parks. So off-leash dogs, Bub Williamson Park, sports arena. I mean, you name it. The parks are what pack this thing out. And by hiring one cops deputy, it's not tangible evidence that we're, in my opinion anyway, and I think in the council's opinion when we made the decision, that it's not tangible evidence that we're actually taking their parks into consideration. I don't think a cops deputy, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be assigned to these parks in particular, and it's not going to be making a difference for the parks, which was the goal of having the park enforcement officers, was to make sure that there's enforcement. And go ahead.
Can't we?
Well, so your COPS team works on the city's high priority issues that are specifically directed based on what the sheriff's captain's seen, what the city manager is identified, and what the city council has asked for. So, for example, but you were talking about more safety related issues, dispensaries, transient issues. Those are the things that you've asked the deputies to take care of. Parks are also a high priority for the council. It depends on how you would like to identify it. But again, it's really just dependent on with the COPS team. They're doing the work that the city has identified as high priority.
Yeah, I got that. And I feel like we have a team that does that, and that we are at our all-time low crime rate wise, which is fantastic. And that when it comes to actually having somebody patrolling our parks and making our, people feel safe, whether it's even at our skate park, you hear that there's the element of the skate park. People want to take their kids down there. I mean, if we had somebody who was regularly patrolling our skate parks, regularly patrolling the frisbee golf, the hills out in Shadow Ridge, South Buena Vista Park, where they say there's packs of dogs that are eating the runners on the weekends, I mean, that is why we put this position out there, not to add one more deputy that's going to be one more boot on the ground for the COPS team. They're doing a great job. I just saw the report. It looks wonderful. So for me, I think that this was a great decision by us to add 2 sets of boots on the ground in our parks in particular, as parks are very, very important to our community. So for me, this makes a bigger difference. So that's my take on it.
Councilmember Franklin.
I wonder if the sheriff's captain, is he still with us?
Yes, he's here.
I wonder if you could straighten me out on something, or Mr. Johnson, maybe you can. I know that the deputies work a 48-hour week, right?
I'll let the captain, why don't you come up to the podium and address the specific hours of a COPS deputy?
Well, how about a regular patrol deputy? Does he work 4 12-hour shifts?
42 and a half hours a week.
Oh, 42 and a half hours.
Yeah, the way it works is they're 12 and a half hour shifts. They work 3 days on, 3 days off, 4 days on, 4 days off is the 2-week schedule. One of those days is actually a 10-hour day.
How many hours do they work in a year? Is it the 2040?
2210, I believe, is the number.
So they work 40 times 52 is 2040, I think, isn't it? Or is it 2080?
That's not my strong point.
Is it 2080? Yeah, 2080. So a sheriff's deputy is actually on the job more hours, even if it's only 150. That's a pretty significant amount of time. Hours more than a employee that's working 40 hours a week, just by nature of the scheduling.
Yes.
Okay. So we get not not the equivalent in terms of time, but.
And we work a variety of shifts. So patrol is a straight 12 and a half.
If we said to you that we wanted to give you a deputy, but we didn't want to put the deputy on the COPS team, we wanted the deputy on patrol, could you identify one of the scheduled patrols that you thought an additional patrol officer would make sense? Because that's one thing I think I've heard from my colleagues is some of my colleagues seem to perhaps be more compelled by the argument of adding a patrol deputy than a cop team deputy, which I was fine with that suggestion. But what say you about that idea?
Well, if we added a patrol deputy, we would have one side of the week that would have an additional deputy on it.
Is there a particular shift during the week that seems to have a higher crime than some others?
I'd have to look
Friday
at the numbers,
night?
but
I know
it's
I know
interesting.
when we want to do a ride along, they always
Yeah.
want to take us on a Friday night. Why is that?
So you can see what we get to deal with every week. It's fun.
Right.
No, it's interesting when I worked. I can tell you when I worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I thought those were the busiest days, and when I worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I thought those were the busiest days. It depends. Is it busier? Is the calls for service busier, or is the paper busier?
Is the second shift busier than the first, or?
No, not necessarily.
Well,
It's just a different workload.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that. I just want to close this round of my remarks by saying the parks are 100% a priority. They are. But we spend more money on public safety in the city by far, by a magnitude of, I don't know, it's got to be at least 5 to 10 times what we spend on the parks. It's probably closer to 10. I'm not embarrassed to say it, and I won't hide from it. Public safety is a higher priority to me than the parks. And our sheriff's deputies, an additional sheriff deputy, will be able to provide actual law enforcement and won't need to call another person, another deputy necessarily. They may call for backup on occasion, but they will be, when they observe a crime, able to engage immediately, and they won't be in an observe and report capacity. So I actually think there's no reason we couldn't say, hey, with one more cops deputy, we want that deputy to spend, 1 day a week or the equivalent in the parks. Is that something that you feel like you'd be able to implement as direction if the council wanted to spend another 12 man-hours a week of deputy time in the parks? Is that something we could work to implement?
We certainly could. Obviously, Allie has it correct. We, with those special purpose deputies, the city manager and I sit down and we talk about things and what the needs of the department are and the needs of the city are. And obviously, you provide those positions to us for special purpose. And so that is entirely something that we could talk about and say, this is where we'd like this deputy to be used. We could also work that in with our other cops units as well, or the other cops, deputies that are assigned to cops. As a practical matter, when we're dealing with homelessness issues and doing all of those outreach things, we're in those parks a lot. In any event, obviously we're targeting the homeless outreach, and we're not necessarily looking for the unleashed dogs, because the topics that we've talked about are homelessness and how homelessness is at the top of the priority scale for our special purpose deputies right now. But those are certainly conversations we could have, and we could definitely meet the city's needs with those.
Thank you, Captain.
Anything else?
Yes, I do have a question for you.
Are you done? Okay. I would tell you that I kind of agree with you. I think that sheriff's deputies, I think the code enforcement would have to call the sheriff deputies if they run across something that, because they don't have any way to enforce anything. So I tend to go with a sheriff deputy. I think that would be money better spent. And I think especially with the increased homeless issues we've been having, I think that's, in the parks, and I think it would be better if we could have the deputies, if they could spend maybe some more time in the parks at some time. So I'm gonna support your thing. So I can't see who's there to talk.
Oh. Councilwoman Rigby.
Oh, Councilwoman Rigby, okay.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. Sure. In your report earlier, you talked about deputy-initiated activity, and it's the time that you're able to do that has decreased significantly this past year.
That's actually only half a year reflected, just so that will probably be double, would be my guess at the end.
Oh, okay, so that was the
It looks like it's
asterisk.
way down, but it's not really way down. That's only half the year reported.
That was the asterisk.
Yeah.
Because it didn't have a key underneath what the asterisk was for. Okay.
It was in my hidden comments.
So my question is, because one of the reasons that I am supportive of the park enforcement, or I wouldn't say enforcement, I would say park services officer, because I don't want it to be adversarial in our community. And my position with the parks, they are a priority for me and for, I believe, the council. It's always on our goals, our list of goals. And we have heard from our community in various parts of the city very loud and clear the last couple of years that parks are a priority and that there is no enforcement of anything in the parks. And I think that we don't have a presence in the parks. So my thought on the park services or the park services officer would be that it is somebody who is a presence in the park that can do enforcement of certain issues. And it's not a necessarily adversarial person, as a sheriff's deputy in full gear would be cruising through the park.
Well, let me just say that I don't want us to be adversarial either.
Right.
That is absolutely not.
But and some of
what
it
we
is
think.
visual.
It is.
And
it's
that's
a
what I'm
perception.
trying to get away from, because I would like us to have, and we talked about this when you and I met when you first came here, or came back to Vista, trying to bridge with the community. And I hear from a lot of community members that sometimes they feel the deputies are in adversarial position to them. And I don't think that's true, but I think that it's an image that's out there that we want to correct.
Perception is reality.
Perception is reality. And so when we're talking with the parks, and we have people we really do need to have people patrolling the parks. And that has been neglected in the city over the years. And we have to take full responsibility for that. But I'm trying to rectify that. And so my position would be for the park service officer to be somebody who is able to perform particular duties and have authority to do that, but not be somebody that's going to be, intimidating to everybody in the park, because I don't want that. But my question is, of the amount of time, because you have in 2017, the first half of 2017, there were 11,273 deputy-initiated activities. Were any of those patrolling the park? Do you know what percentage of time your deputies take the initiative to go patrol the parks?
No, I do not. I can't give you that.
I'm hearing never. We
Yeah.
never see deputies in the parks.
I can't give you that number. I know that I frequently hear that I never see deputies in my neighborhood, but I know that we are in those neighborhoods. So I would imagine that the same exists at the parks. I can tell you that our senior volunteers spend a lot of time in the parks, walking the parks and doing essentially what we're talking about here, being ambassadors in the parks. And when there are issues, obviously they're not enforcing anything. We do not want them to enforce anything. And when they are in the parks and they see issues, they call for us. And so I guess looking at this, what I think the council really needs to look at is, do you want 2 park ambassadors that are going to be addressing some of the issues that may not rise to the level of a deputy going out and taking time away from doing other deputy-initiated activities? Or do you want to supplement a number where you have special purpose deputies that are going out and doing specific things at the direction of the council? The ambassadors can certainly do the same.
Right. No, and it is a difficult decision.
It is.
Because we do have limited funds, and we have made promises to the community as far as law enforcement and adding deputies to the street. And I feel the same way. Yes, we want more deputies, and I would love to be able to do more than just 1 deputy. I would like to do 20 more deputies on the streets in Vista. I'd like to see deputies just walking the beat down Main Street like Mayberry RFD, but that's not reality for us right now. So the parks has been an area that's been greatly neglected, and I would like to see that rectified. We do need an officer, we do need additional deputies, but I also would not like to see a deputy just disappear into the ether of the department, never to really be seen in the community. If we're going to be adding deputies to the roster, I would like to at least know that they're using some of their deputy-initiated time patrolling our parks, perhaps a little more frequently than is being done. So that's my position on this.
Had you been around the city earlier today and some of the parks in the creek beds, you would have run into the 6 cop deputies and the sergeant working with HHSA and the nonprofits doing that outreach in those areas. we do take these things seriously, and we use those deputies that you provide to us for special purposes to accomplish tasks that you want us to accomplish.
No, I understand that. Okay. I just would like to see more in our parks, because that has become a problem, and our community has been very vocal about that.
Councilwoman Rigby, if I can add a little bit to the statistics, our typical 40-hour employees, that equates to 2,080 hours a year. Obviously, someone will take a sick day or vacation, but that's 2,080 hours per full-time equivalent. So 2 positions gets you about 4,100 hours a year of time wherever it's spent. And then we did put in both the June agenda report and this one just a kind of a snippet of calls for service over a 12-month period. Yes,
right
just
here.
so you had wondered what they're doing in the parks. Those were things that law enforcement were doing in the parks that potentially law enforcement could continue doing, or park officers. I'm not giving it a name yet. That's next.
Right.
And if I may.
But there's also something to be said about having our deputies in the community where they're not sirens screaming, running across town, chasing people down.
Those are the deputy-initiated activities we'd like to see.
Right.
Not the XPs that we were talking about earlier.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I know a lot of that will come with the more deputies we have on the street. But we're just exploring options that we have at this time. So thank you.
Sure.
And if I may, the Code Enforcement Office does receive several calls and complaints concerning our parks, in which our area code officers are dispatched to address whatever complaint that comes in on a reactive basis. And so we do have the ability to enforce our adopted municipal codes as it relates to the trash or any type of blight. I think there may be a misunderstanding as far as our role and position when we make contact with subjects out in the field, which would include the transient population. And we do, not all of them are violent offenders. Some of them are there because they have no place to go, or they're just trying to spend some time somewhere during the course of their day. But, the goal of the Code Enforcement Office, officers and our office in general, is to make sure that our community, and including our parks, remain safe.
Right. No, I understand. Thank you. But I do have one more question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. My understanding is that we had park officers, park rangers a long time ago, and we no longer have them. Do we know why we got rid of them?
And actually, the city manager may have a better sense of this, but we have positions within recreation that are called park directors. Sometimes they were called park rangers, but they basically enforce the field and recreation portions of the park and close up the parks at night. I don't believe we ever had, at least in my time with the city, park rangers on board. The city manager may have more information.
Yeah, we didn't have park rangers that actively walked the parks. As Ms. Zimmerman said, we have cut down by 1 over time. They're now called park directors. But even when we were at 3 at one point in time, and even when we had 3, they were primarily working with the leagues, with the setups, with the events at the Jim Porter Center.
So we have 2 park directors now.
We have 2, and we have a number of part-time park directors as well that offset different events.
Okay.
And they work staggered schedules into the evening to close parks and facilities. So you'll see a phone number that they're issued that they each use on much of our signage. If you have a after hours call this number, and that's the park director.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm hearing that we could use cops to help in the parks. And, if our code enforcement is going to have to call the sheriff if there's an incident, then that's not really what I had intended a couple months ago when I proposed this. I was looking for somebody that could handle situations, and if we're not going to be arming that individual, they're not going to be able to handle those situations. They'll have to call the sheriff. So I'm inclined to change my position on this and agree with Councilman Franklin. So I'll make a motion that we go ahead and look into that, look into a position for an additional cops.
Deputy Mayor, we brought that report in June. I can revisit it with the City Council if that's the direction.
Yeah, I think we need to revisit it because I think there's a lot of issues that have come up here, a lot of direction you probably have received at this point, so we would have to
that would involve changes to the class and comp index and, okay, if that's what the...
Well, that's just a motion.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone anywhere yet.
I'll second. Okay, so Councilmember Green's, you want to go between him?
Well, before we vote, may I? If we have, what was the amount left over in the year-end fund balance? I'm sorry, not the year-end fund balance, but in the amount that we project in revenue, what's our projected surplus for
Our current, in your adopted budget for 1819, it's about $23,000.
Now, that's after enough money was set aside for one deputy, correct?
We didn't set aside money for one deputy. We included the 2 positions in the parks, or the code enforcement division.
Which were very similar to the amount that we would have spent on a deputy.
How similar was it?
I believe the number was close to about $220,000 for the 2 positions versus $280 for the 1.
For a cops deputy, closer to 260.
But and was the first year startup higher?
Yeah,
Slightly.
the first year startup is higher.
But the annual go forward basis is 260.
And the captain might be able to say more specific, but it's close. It's somewhere in the ballpark of 255 to 265 on an annual basis.
But you said we have 23,000 left.
Correct.
Because my thought was, what would it cost to hire a part-time code enforcement officer to work exclusively in the parks?
Somebody that worked 18 hours a week is probably somewhere in the ballpark of $20,000 to $25,000. I believe is what we pay our part-time code enforcement.
It would depend on the level of the position that you're looking for as well.
Well, it sounds like, so we're not properly agendized to go forward with the deputy tonight, is that right?
Well, you can give us direction, but we have to come back to you to make changes to the budget. We'd have to make changes to class and comp.
Well, I was just going to throw this out there. If we have 23,000 unbudgeted, potentially we could look, because rather than start with 2 additional park enforcement officers, what if we started with a part-time? And that was a recognition of the fact that we want to do some targeted enforcement on behalf of code. I just wonder if I could win the support from more of the council if we did that, and does that seem like something feasible that we could do 1 deputy and 1 part-time? Is there a way to split the...
Financially, yes. I don't know how effective 1 part-time park officer would be with our size of our city and the scope of the need. That person would be stretched very, very thin, and I think it would be very difficult to see any meaningful impact.
If we spent 1 additional day a week of deputy time in the parks, and we added to that then is two enough to get the job done?
I think at that point in time, we're throwing around numbers. They're raw, but at that point in time, it's changes to the budget for that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. To keep it clean, because I think we've got 3 going the same way here, I'd like to second Councilman Aguilera's motion to instruct staff to, the mayor's motion? Oh, then I'll triple it. The motion to bring back the proposal to add a deputy, but I would add another, which is, can we look at it as a separate agenda item, whether or not it makes sense to do a part-time Parks Code Enforcement Officer?
Well, if the council wishes, when this is all said and done, we can come back to you with information on that to show you how it affects the budget, and then also show you what it would mean to have a part-time code officer for the parks in terms of dollars, in terms of actual patrolling, and how that might look.
I mean, 20 hours a week spent in the parks is more than the 0 we're spending now. Are we spending 0 hours a week now enforcing code in the parks?
No, we're just enforcing codes on a reactive basis, not a proactive basis.
So code is not patrolling in the parks now.
Not unless there's a complaint.
So they're responding to calls for service, but they're not patrolling. Isn't that fair? They're not doing a code officer initiated action.
That's not necessarily true during the weekend hours. I was a weekend supervisor. We would have officers, and we only had one or two available during the weekend shifts, go out and make sure that there weren't any illegal vending activities occurring. But even then, it was very, very thin because those officers were also in need of addressing their personal or their designated areas.
Are we doing that now?
For the weekend enforcement?
Yes.
Weekend enforcement's a little thin right now because they're missing a position. So we have 2 officers.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll leave it clear as mud there, but we've got the motion for bringing back the deputy, and then I think taking a look at a part-time code enforcement. I mean, it might not be all we want, but it might be more than we're doing now. You know. I mean, would there be a reason not to do that?
We'd need to do some research.
Address it. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Councilmember Green.
So my main concern with this and listening to Assistant City Manager Ali Zimmer is that you've budgeted for $220,000 for these 2 positions, and at that $220,000 budget, when all is said and done, we have $23,000 left over, which if my math is correct, that's $243,000. A deputy costs $285,000, which now puts my budget $42,000 in the red, and if we want to hire another part-time person, now I'm at like $67,000. Like for me, it's just not, it doesn't make sense. I got more for my money before, and by adding the deputy, it sounds like we're going to have to revise our budget. Is that
Councilman,
correct?
I was a little bit off in the fiscal impact in this report. It was a budget of about $238,000.
Okay.
So,
But it still puts
we
us
will
in the
have
red,
to-
right?
Yeah, and we'll have to confirm the numbers for the startup and the ongoing cost of whatever deputy.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure we're clear that the sheriff does cost about $50,000 extra dollars, and we don't have $50,000 extra dollars from what I see.
But just to
Go
clarify,
ahead.
I know we threw out a lot of numbers, and Ms. Zimmerman just said 238 for the 2 parks employees, correct?
Yeah.
And the cops deputy is probably closer. Let's use the 265 number as a.
So we're going to magically, we'll break even
It's
on
probably
a budget.
no. I'm just saying it's about $30,000 difference instead of 50. I just want to.
So either way, we're still, now our budget is in the red again, and the whole purpose is to have good balanced budgets, and that's why we gave you the direction for the park enforcement or park services. By the way, park services officer was my number 1 choice too, Councilwoman Rigby. So I'm very disappointed, but the motion's been made, so let's vote.
I would just like to add to that, I would like the staff, when they bring back the proposal for the deputy, and it's 238 plus 23,000 unbudgeted is $261,000. And what was the amount again for the deputy?
265.
So we're $4,000 off. I'd like you to find another $25,000 that we can reduce in spending that you could propose to the council so that we maintain that extraordinarily modest cushion.
Did you just say reduce spending by how much?
By $25,000, so we maintain that. I mean, I agree with Councilman Green. We want to approve a balanced budget. So if we're going to be 4,000 over, and I don't want to be, that razor thin. If we're going to be 4,000 over, let's find $25,000 to cut. I think we could probably identify $25,000 somewhere, couldn't we? I'll leave that to you to bring back a proposal to us, but we don't have to adopt both of those. But I'd like to at least see it. Is that fair?
I think a balanced budget's a balanced budget. It's not like,
Yeah,
we're going to borrow on a credit card.
That's what I'm after. I'm after a balanced budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we need to vote on this? No.
No, I think you've given
You
us
just have
direction.
direction? Okay.
Thank you. Based on this direction, we have no further report.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll likely come back in September with the information.
Okay, so that takes us to our oral communications. And do I have any?
Yes, you do. There's 19, I believe.
19 for oral communications, and each speaker is given 3 minutes to speak on matters not on the agenda. Just kind of remember that decorum is important. We're not going to be clapping between, no shouting from the audience, no clapping between. We'll be respectful of your speaking. So we will start out here with Carl Hughes, and he'll be followed by Mary Jo Poole, followed by Catherine Kerner. If the other two will come over here and stand, it will make it a little quicker. don't think your mic is on. Hold on.
Hello again. I'm back to talk about the research I've done about the effects of marijuana. I did see, I think it was speakers back in June or May talking about different claims they made. I remember Kelly McCormick, who's part of the San Diego Alliance. She was talking about how there was marijuana with THC levels of 80 to 90%. And some people were kind of like scoffing at that. But I did see personally some images of vape cartridges with marijuana concentrates. For example, this is Northern Lights, which is an indica strain, and it has 86% THC, but there's less than 1% of CBD in this concentrate. And it says for medical use only. So there's 86% THC and less than 1% CBD. And here we have another of the same brand. This is OG Kush, which is a hybrid strain. There's 89% THC and exactly 0% CBD on the container. And this is also for medical use only. So also, I did research, and from the DEA, they reported that marijuana concentrates contain extraordinarily high levels of THC that could range from 40 to 80%. So we have the information from the DEA. Another claim was that crime would decrease, as well as DUIs would decrease in places that would legalize marijuana. Well, I did research just on one, but I did check out the state of Colorado, which is pretty what people like to look at when it comes to marijuana and legalization. And according to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Crime, they found that there have been increases in different levels of crime reports. So if you take a look here for homicides, this is 2007 and this is 2016. So there has been an increase from 2015 to 2016 of 9.9%. You can see the trend, it's starting to have an uptick right there. The report of rape has also gone up, 7.2% increase from 2015. If you check out the line from 2007, the line is increasing quite significantly. We also have, well, this is kind of a smaller printout, but this is motor vehicle theft from 2007 to 2016. And as you can see, it's definitely way more significant than the other crimes. So I've also checked out other things such as
You have to wrap up. Your time is running up. You can make one last statement. Quick one.
Lastly, I think that when people say no one has died from marijuana, I don't think that's true because there's DUIs as well as BHO hash oil explosions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Jo Poole, followed by Catherine Kerner, followed by Jolene Solomon.
Hello, City Council. Thank you for being here. We were concerned about you, Councilman Aguilera, at the last meeting since you weren't here. So we made a carton for you in case you weren't here tonight. First of all, I wanted to object to the 3-minute limit. I had 2 cards because I had some things to say, and I can only speak 3 minutes. This has to do with your absence, Councilman Aguilera, on June 26, 2018, as well as this City Council for putting an arbitrary vote on the amicus brief on that particular meeting right before you went dark when you knew full well Councilman Aguilera would be on vacation. There was no reason to put it on that night, and you did. As a resident of District 1, I feel like my rights were violated that night. I'm also here for the Vistas Family for Justice, Sergio Wick, Jonathan Cornell. We want a community oversight board. We want training and de-escalation, and we want increased mental health services in this community. We don't need decreased mental health services, although I'm sure the council would be happy to send our mental health patients 50 miles away. I'm going to say they're part of our community, and we should embrace them and help them. I don't know who's going to pay for the private ambulances to take them all the way to the county. I spoke with Amanda, Councilwoman Rigby at the chill out thing, and she's like, we don't want our taxes raised. Well, you know what? If all those taxes have to be raised at a county level because we have to ship everybody 50 miles away, guess what? That's everybody's taxes. Right? That's everybody's taxes. We need those crisis stabilization units here. I'm appalled at the way Tri-City has conducted its business. I'm appalled that the City Council, and I hope you take a solid stand, and we need more mental health resources in this community, not less. More mental health. Part of the reason our sheriffs are busy are because of mental health issues. And you're taking resources away, right? And you're going to cut $25,000? Are you kidding me? So we can get one more deputy when we could have two for the price of one in our parks? Really? And I like your idea of not being controversial. Maybe it doesn't bother you, Councilman Franklin, to see a sheriff walking down your streets, but I guarantee you in my neighborhood, it bothers people, okay? And don't ever, when the districting started, you all sat here, I represent all of Vista. I'm calling you all out on it, except for Joe Green. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're not going to do that. If we're going to do that, we're going to take a break and we'll let the deputies worry about it. This is, have decorum. We're listening to you. We're being patient. You need to show respect for all of us. So, but I need to have the next two line up over here. I'm not seeing that. So I have Catherine Kerner, followed by Jolene Solomon, followed by Mark Solomon.
Good evening. Thank you very much for letting me speak on this issue. I'd like to just say that I agree 100% with whatever she just said, and it was very well spoken. I am once again disappointed with all of you. I really am. We had this before with so many other issues where you just shove things through, you don't listen to the community, what the community wants, and you just put a vote through. Obviously, Mr. Green is the exception here. Mr. Aguilera, I would just be pissed if I were you. You know, it's like, really? I mean, somebody said earlier that perception is everything. Do you know what my perception of this city council and this mayor is? That you're racist. Do you know why my perception is that you're racist? Because you just jumped on board the Trump train and you jumped on board a policy that tears apart families, that hurts people in a community that is almost, 50% Latin American? And you want to sit here and tell us that you're not racist? You want to sit here and tell us that you're here to support this community? If I were you, I would take a long, good, hard look in the mirror. What you did with that vote was disgusting. And I am here to say that I think every single one of you should seriously consider re-voting on the issue and dig deep into your souls and your conscience before you do it. I could stand up here and I could tell you about the 10th Amendment to our Constitution, but frankly, I don't think any of you, with the exception of Mr. Green over here, really care about it. I think you care about your own agendas, I think you care about your own pocketbook, and I think you care about your own reelection. But I'm here to tell you, myself and the other community organizers here are going to make sure that those reelections never happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jolene Solomon, followed by Mark Solomon, followed by Noel Breen.
Yes, thank you. I'm here for allowing me to speak. I'm here today to address...
Can you talk right in the microphone so we can hear you?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm here today to address the issue of police misconduct taking place within our local government, and also in support of the Weeks family and myself, and I believe them. I've also experienced stuff, a lot of horrible things, and Myself, unemployed homemaker and former pediatric nurse and student now, along with my retired disabled Navy veteran husband. Since October 8th of 2012, our world has been literally turned upside down and has never been the same since, due to lies, corruption, and concealment of many crimes within our local and state government. Me and my husband have worked tirelessly to bring home my daughter, Nicole, who, under false representation and allegations by those with ties to local law enforcement who continue to obstruct justice and strip my husband of the constitutional rights he fought to defend for 20 years of his life. I am no longer afraid because, if not for my faith, I'd be gone. Basically, we worked tirelessly only to be ignored and disregarded by all the agencies, local and state, over and over again for the past 6 years. To this day, I don't know where my daughter is. Basically, it was an abduction that was staged as a runaway. And this has all been documented. And the police continue to turn us away. I mean, if that's going on, I have this is going on too, but this is harder to believe. It's to the point where I will I don't even want to send my kids to public school full time, because I've seen what the schools are capable of as well. I was wrongfully accused of child abuse. Many agencies have helped keep my daughter away. Meanwhile, I managed to maintain custody of a 3-year-old. How does that make sense? There's a conspiracy, and they're hiding it. The police continue to hide it. They won't even answer our calls. You know what it's like with me and my husband? When a couple is going through such a tragedy, they will not even answer our calls. We've had fights and arguments, and they will not respond because they know what the freaking crap they're trying to cover up. And they've been covering it up for 6 years. It was an abduction. It's all documented in the school documentation. We've talked to senators, we've talked to everybody, and they continue to cover it and pass the buck. No, we don't want to get involved. It's too messy.
I need you to wrap up.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Solomon, followed by Noel Breen, followed by Rachel Bartlett.
Hello, my name is Mark Christopher Solomon. I'm retired Navy, 20 years, submarine service. My stepdaughter was abducted from Rancho Buena Vista High School October 8th, 2012. She was aided by the principal, who released our daughter to someone he identified as Mom Christie, knowing full well that the mother of the child was Jolene Solomon. Rancho Buena Vista High School attendance notes. This was a bogus call for an off-campus pass. This was documented by the Rancho Buena Vista High School. They also marked the minor child unexcused absent October 8th, 2012 p.m. This signified that they understood that the child was there legally in the morning and left the school improperly. She left the school because the principal released her to a person identified as Mom Christie. There's so much more to this, too. The local law enforcement collaborated with Nicole Bergen and her family. She was a self-proclaimed director of SoCal H2O Rescue Team. This was an illegal nonprofit organization known by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department and by the California State Department of Parks and Recreation. I have documentation and communication that proves this. In a police report 14137274, Officer William Clem identifies Nicole Bergen as stating that she was, sorry about that. Officer William Clem identifies that Nicole runs a private search and rescue, which is her cause and not a business, and that Nicole advertises on Facebook and is a lifeguard by trade. In his statement, this disturbed me and forced me into further investigation, which proved him correct. Nicole Bergen submitted an initial registration with the California Attorney General Office of Charitable Trusts stating that her organization, SoCal Issue Rescue Team, was not a charity, did not have IRS tax-exempt status, and in her Facebook page advertising her company, SoCal Issue Rescue Team, from 2010, she has solicited for donations and sponsorships, claiming that all donations were tax deductible. In Police Report 14137274, Deputy Skaggs also collaborates with this known criminal in falsifying his own police report, stating that...
I need you to wrap up.
Okay, I'll wrap up, and I will submit more information to this council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Noel Breen, followed by Rachel Bartlett, followed by Ann Force.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I also wanted to revisit the vote you folks took to join President Trump's administration's amicus lawsuit against the California Values Act. There's going to be a lot of people more eloquent than I speaking, I would imagine, after me. But I will say that the way the process happened that evening, I think, was very, very wrong. I think it was a horribly divisive vote. And more importantly, over history in this country, there have been waves of hysteria about people that at one time or another were not very popular. Almost every wave of immigrant that came into this country, at one time or another, there was a huge interest group in this country wanting to chase them away. And what I see going on now is a stain in our history, like in a time of war, when we chose to intern Japanese citizens because we were scared and we were afraid. Well, nobody's bombing Pearl Harbor in view of your choice to join the amicus brief. And the time has come for a considered look at immigration policy. I am not unaware of the fact that President Obama's administration took some very, very drastic steps as far as this issue, and I demonstrated for years against that as well. And I also understand the problems that a rancher and a farmer in southern Arizona and southern New Mexico has had in the past because of the effects that illegal immigration has had on their families and their ranches and their farms. So I'm not coming to you from a radical perspective. I'm coming from a perspective of morality, and I'm coming from a perspective of common sense. Whether or not you agree with the President's action and his administration's action or not, folks, this lawsuit's going forward. The opinion of Carlsbad and Vista and every other smaller jurisdiction has no effect on a case that's already in the appellate courts. All you did that evening is vote to join something that obviously has had impact and ripped your community apart. As a man of faith, as a man who cares about fellow human beings, I don't see due process happening with a lot of these people, especially the separated families. And I really urge you to reconsider your decision to hop on that train. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rachel Bartlett, followed by Ann Force, followed by Frank Painter.
My name is Rachel Bartlett, and I care about Vista. I grew up in this community, started at Grapevine, graduated from Vista High. My son attends school here. I work here. Even though I live in Oceanside, these are my people. I'm standing up here tonight because my fear of public speaking is nothing compared to the fear that many of my community members are living in constantly. Anytime they leave their homes, anytime there's a knock at the door, they go to work, to get groceries, to pick their kids up from school, it's done in fear of the law enforcement patrolling these neighborhoods. We need to build relationships of mutual trust between the community and our law enforcement. This starts with accountability, because there has not been any. We need to know that if a member of our community is gunned down in the streets, there will be an independent community review of the events. We need body cameras to be worn, and we need the tapes to be available to those of us who the deputies are supposed to serve and protect. We need deputies with de-escalation training who have options other than lethal force in their training. We need to know if an officer is involved in a second fatal shooting in 11 months, that we will see an investigation that we can believe in, and that justice will be served to the families. And voting against SB 54 in the last meeting was an act to deepen the distrust between Vista residents and the local government, because it sends a message to the community they cannot trust the local law enforcement when they're already afraid. It tells them to stay afraid, to stay in the shadows, and this is not healthy for our community environment. If you think the majority of Vista supports the sanctuary state bill, that's because you are only hearing from those who have your trust. Because when you walk the streets in our Latinx community and knock on the doors and ask people in those areas about SB 54, they're going to bring down that 70% average that was touted at the last meeting. Residents are scared, and you're not hearing it because they're too afraid to speak up. For the sake of a safer community, I urge the council to reconsider the votes on SB 54. Sergio Wick, Jonathan Coronel, say their names.
Ann Force, followed by Frank Painter, followed by Linda Friedman.
I am Ann Force. I'm a Vista resident. I spoke at the June 26th meeting asking the City Council to refrain from voting to join the lawsuit against our state's law, the California Values Act. I feel that the City Council mistakenly allowed two members, Councilmember Rigby and Councilmember Franklin, to pass this resolution to satisfy their upline, the Republican Party. I request that the entire council have a new and public vote on this subject, because many of the council members' arguments in favor of joining the lawsuit on the side of the federal government and against the state of California are untrue. The law has three major components to make our communities and our city citizens safer. Also, allowing our Sheriff's Department personnel and equipment to assist in DHS holds can have a negative impact on Vista's safety and Vista's budget. You need to inform the taxpayers of the projected expense for aiding ICE workers. I feel you have dishonored all our ancestors by passing this resolution. Thank you for your service, and thank you for listening.
Frank Painter, followed by Linda Friedman, followed by Rebecca Medici.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Frank Painter. I've been a Vista resident for over 6 years. On June 26th, at the last City Council meeting, Council members Franklin and Rigby asked that the California Values Act item be put on the agenda for discussion. Councilman Franklin introduced the item. He said that the California Values Act, also known as SB 54, was an item of contention in our community, as evidenced by the number of citizens that have come tonight. There were 50 speakers. All spoke in favor of SB 54. That suggests that council members Franklin and Rigby were wrong to claim SB 54 as an item of contention in our community. Clearly, the citizens of Vista support SB 54, even if some council members do not. The discussion took place when Councilmember Aguilera was on vacation. I, for one, regret his absence because I would like to know his stance on this. If there is any way in which we could have a revote on the motion that was put forward by Councilmember Franklin, I would like to see that happen. Perhaps by now, with better information and a better sense of what the citizens of Vista want, a more seasoned decision could be made. Councilman Franklin, at 3 hours, 34 minutes, and 47 seconds, on the video minutes that the city published, pulled another number out of the air when he said that according to some polls, plural, as many as 70% of Californians opposed SB 54. I've reviewed a lot of data that's available on the web, and I can't find a poll that suggests that most Californians now oppose SB 54, much less 70% of us. However, in January this year, a politician named Travis Allen appeared on Fox News, that's Fox News spelled with an F, with some out-of-date information he had dug up from a 2015 UC Berkeley poll, a poll that was taken before SB 54 had been crafted. Maybe it was this information from Fox News that influenced council members Rigby and Franklin to advance their motion at the last meeting. That information was gathered prior to passage of SB 54. Since then, UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies has rerun the poll. Current data from that source relating to current circumstances shows that 56% of California citizens support SB 54.
I need you to wrap up, sir.
Well, anyway, I looked, and I've got 5 other polls here that show roughly the same data, and I'll be happy to share links to that information, but there are no other polls suggesting that the state of California doesn't.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Linda Friedman, followed by Rebecca Medici, followed by Amanda Messia.
My name is Linda Friedman, and I'm a Vista resident. I come before you to speak in reference to the last council meeting's action to join the amicus brief against the California Values Act. Councilman Franklin, I take specific offense with your assertion at that meeting that you acted on behalf of the vast majority of the people in Vista. Your assertion's methodology, or lack of it, is highly questionable, if not false. Where did you get your data? The city never conducted a survey of residents' opinions about the California Values Act. Therefore, your assertion is unsubstantiated and therefore invalid. Further, you're spearheading a motion that was carried at the last city council meeting for the city of Vista to join in the amicus brief is fraught with bias. To wit, I now address your use of the word vast. Your use of this tired, overly used word to support your biased position that the people of Vista agree with you is indicative of your lack of informed debate skills at best, and at worst, if you were even remotely aware of global perceptions, you would know that the quotation vast majority is associated with delineation of race and infers that people of color are in the minority. Look it up. The population of Vista is comprised of 63.1 combined Hispanic and other mixed race. Your broadcasting of false generalization, vast majority, is inaccurate. You should be aware that you now represent only one district, not the vast majority. Let it be on the Vista City Council record that I, as a Vista resident, stand in direct opposition to the City of Vista joining the amicus brief against the California Values Act, and I request that it be retracted and nullified and a revote be taken when all council members are present. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rebecca Medici, followed by Amanda Messia, followed by Nikki Leeds.
My name is Rebecca Medici. I'm a Vista resident, and I've been a research attorney for 29 years. Criminal law and constitutional law are my specialty. So when the council talked about the California Values Act at the last meeting, there were a number of things that it got wrong, and I would particularly like to address 2 that Councilman Franklin said that were completely incorrect. While you claimed that violent and serious felons were being released on the streets as a result of this act, in actuality, all felons are in the category where ICE is informed of their release dates and picks them up for custody. Only in the case of minor misdemeanors such as shoplifting and minor drug use offenses would ICE not be informed of their release dates? And even in those cases, ICE has ways of finding those people and intercepting them from the jail or the courts when they are released. My second concern is that 17 times Councilman Franklin mentioned the Constitution and said that the California Values Act was unconstitutional and lawless, apparently in violation of the Supremacy Clause and preemption. These are concepts that I happen to know very well. And do you know who else knows them well? Judge John Mendez, a George W. Bush appointee who ruled on the 4th of July in the United States versus California that the California Values Act is not unconstitutional. He found that the California Values Act does not violate federal law requiring the sharing of immigration status between states and federal government. He further found that the California has not crossed over into the exclusively federal realm of determining who may enter and remain within the United States. SB 54 only governs the activities of states' own law enforcement agencies, although Congress clearly intends its immigration laws to exclusively regulate the subject of immigration and activities of federal immigration enforcement officers. The court sees no clear indication that Congress intended to displace the states' regulations of their own law enforcement agencies. Judge Mendez then found that the enumerated powers under the Constitution do not include the authority to dictate a state's law enforcement policies. He indicates that this 10th Amendment, which is states' rights, something that you should also know well, might be violated if federal laws were to compel law enforcement activities. So you see, there is nothing unconstitutional about California values or the California Values Act. And based on the law, I would like you to consider revoting on the issue of joining the amicus brief.
Thank you. Amanda Messia, followed by Nikki Leeds, followed by Matt LeCompte.
Hi, my name is Amanda Mesha. Thank you for the chance to address this council once again. I'm speaking in favor and in full support of the California Values Act, and I felt that I needed to come and clear the record. The last time I spoke here, I was accused of having false and misleading statements, and I believe that you were misled with false statements. I quoted directly from numerous transcripts from Sheriff Bill Gore. Councilmember Franklin stated, quote, that what I said was, I'm sorry, here the quote starts, that's actually false. That's actually completely false. I've read every public statement that the sheriff has made, and the sheriff has made his best effort to be neutral. I would like to state that was completely false. You obviously have not read every statement Sheriff Gore has made. I will happily provide to this council a March 28th transcript in which Sheriff Gore completely and totally supports not involving sheriff deputies in federal immigration issues. He has said that many times. Quote from Sheriff Gore, I think in talking to my fellow sheriffs, maybe with the exception of one or two, that the chiefs of police in California, we are less safe, I believe, if the people in this country illegally perceive us as immigration officers. I truly believe that. That is Sheriff Gore's words. I will provide those transcripts to you. That was a major argument in this council joining the amicus brief, that Franklin misled you on Sheriff Gore's position. I find that highly dangerous. The other thing I find highly dangerous is you never consulted your city attorney. This is a legal lawsuit. It completely ignored your staff and your city attorney. All other cities, including the County Board of Supervisors, they included their staff. Franklin, you said on that same meeting, we're not going to be a lawless city. Laws are our ability to have discourse. We must respect our institutions of government right here. You completely disregarded your staff. You disrespected your city attorney. You were fiscally irresponsible with your city's money and joining a lawsuit of which you clearly were not familiar with the law, and you misrepresented Sheriff Gore's position. I feel that this council needs to take another ruling and another look at this Values Act based on what I have just represented to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Leeds, followed by Matt LeCompte, followed by Kathleen Boyle.
Hi, good evening. I'm very much a stakeholder here in Vista. As a matter of fact, today I just paid my business license tax, so I'm very much a stakeholder and I very much care about this city. My name is Nikki Leeds. I would like to point out another piece of misinformation that was claimed, this one by Councilwoman Rigby. Many of us discussed the fact that the California Values Act would protect crime victims and witnesses from being taken into ICE custody, and that this fear would prevent them from calling the sheriff or testifying in court. Councilwoman Rigby claimed that even before the California Values Act was enacted, this fear was unfounded because existing law prevents victims and witnesses from being deported. In order to support this claim, she misquoted the California Values Act, which states, existing law provides that whenever an individual who is a victim of or a witness to a hate crime, or who otherwise can give evidence in a hate crime investigation, is not charged with or convicted of committing any crime under state law, a peace officer may not detain the individual exclusively for any actual or suspended immigration violation, or report or turn the individual over to the federal immigration authorities. Councilwoman Rigby left the word hate out of the bill, possibly to leave the impression that victims and witnesses to any crime were previously protected. However, hate crimes are very limited and cover only crimes which are committed because of actual or perceived characteristics of the victim, which include disability, gender, nationality, race, ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation. The California Values Act is designated to protect victims and witnesses of all crimes, including domestic violence and human trafficking. These victims and witnesses were not protected under prior law, as was incorrectly claimed by Councilwoman Rigby when she misquoted the California Values Act. Because Councilwoman Rigby's incorrect statement about the law, and because of the many other false statements made by her colleagues, Councilmember Franklin, and most importantly, because Councilmember Aguilera was not present at the meeting, I request that there be a speedy revote to include Councilmember Aguilera's vote on the resolution to join Trump's lawsuit. In order for the people of Mr. Aguilera's district to understand his values, they will need to know how he would have voted on the matter that will affect his constituents most. This is critical since he now represents a district in Vista that has many Latino residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt LeCompte, followed by Kathleen Boyle, followed by Cindy Oda-Aman.
Hello, City Council. I do show respect to the council, but it's not always easy when they don't misrepresent or they misrepresent the facts in the community. Take, for instance, Councilmember Franklin. We've been hearing a lot about your dirty laundry from the California Values Act, creating alternative statistics, taking quotes out of context, representing or having opinions represented as facts. I think at one point you put on the black robes and were the Supreme Court Chief Justice, and you let us know what the decision was going to be. I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but sometimes when one of your fellow council members is disagreeing with you about a subject, you will turn your chair, and you will turn your body, and you will face them, and then you will lean in, and then you'll move your head forward, and you will stare and glare. You know, mad dogging other members of the city council is not civility. You know, trying to intimidate or suggest physical confrontation with other members of the city council is absolutely unacceptable, and you know better than that. Councilmember Franklin, the next time you talk about civility for the Vista City Council, it should be in front of a mirror. Councilmember Aguilera, the first time I met you was during the car wash City Council. You said, in regards to a car wash being moved into a community, you said it's not a liquor store, so it's not going to be a quality of life issue. And I was dumbfounded because we literally had an hour of the community telling you that this was going to be a quality of life issue. Obviously, it's a car wash. I mean, I find your leadership style lacking in empathy and engagement, and I'm thoroughly disappointed. Mayor Rigby, The last time I was here, you abstained on the vote of the California Values Act. You've been on the council for a long time, but I've only been coming to it for a short time. So I will probably most remember you as the abstainer. Now, I'm told that you did change your vote after the fact. There were 50 speakers unanimously wanted you to support it, and you waited until we left to vote against it. I'm not going to speculate as to why that was, because none of those reasons flatter you. But what I can say for sure is that there are more difficult decisions coming for the Vista City Council, more controversial decisions, and we need and deserve a mayor that's going to stand up to bullies. We also need a mayor that, at the very least, is willing to have their true vote be in front of the community.
Thank you, sir. Kathleen Boyle, followed by Cindy Otoaman, followed by Katsuyo Fukuyama.
Good evening. At the last City Council meeting, attendees were sharply criticized for being disruptive and for being a mob, for not showing respect to the council. Respect is a two-way street, but we see hypocrisy from the council. The first time I came to a City Council meeting, I was struck at Councilmember Franklin, who angrily lambasted Mary Jo Poole, sitting over here, because she questioned the lack of shade trees in her neighborhood. Not knowing that she's a feisty professor of criminology at Cal State, I thought, well, that woman will never come back to City Council again. But then she comes often, and she was speaking very ably tonight. 1 year ago, Councilmember Franklin was exceptionally rude to Karina Contreras after she reacted from the audience to his suggestion that she educate her people on how to deal with deputies. She had spoken from the podium about Jonathan Coronel shot in the back numerous times as he was surrendering. The council member shouted and waved his finger at her, saying she did not represent democracy. You can look on the tape, don't make that face at me. But some constituencies get different treatment. The most disruptive council meeting I have attended was the one on dog parks. They were shouting and jeering from the different sides. People seemed ready to come to blows, but there was no threat of clearing out the chamber. Nobody referred to them as mobs, perhaps because they were from Councilmember Franklin's district. There must also be respect for statements of fact. These are not opinions. Facts have scientific or statistical foundation. They are based on research, should be conducted by a legitimate source. On June 26th, Council members Franklin and Rigby introduced a resolution that disrespects many members of our community by signing on to the Sessions-Trump attack on SB 54. Council members insulted our intelligence that night. Councilman Aguilera, who is the deputy mayor, whose district has the highest proportion of Latinx, was on vacation. Why not wait for him to come back? Why did it have to be that night? Several of us presented statistics, and I gave you this graph. I gave everybody this graph, showing that a community is more safe when residents do not feel threatened by local law enforcement and are able to report crimes. Much of the ensuing verbal reaction, which you call disrespect, was due to council members Franklin and Rigby repeating the non-truths, ignoring statistics and conducted polls. And then there was a vote, followed by ordering us out of the chamber, followed by a revote out of our presence. That was a dirty trick. That was not respectful. Is it even legal? Have you read SB 54? It is not what you are making it out to be. I ask that you show us respect to the people of our city and take another vote, perhaps not tonight, with cooler heads and with the vote of Councilman Aguilera.
Thank you. Cindy Odaman, followed by Katsuo Fukuyama, followed by Mike Woods.
Hi, I'm Cindy Odaman. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak, and thank you, council member, and thank you for the staff. Our family has been resident of Vista, California since 1961, and we have lived in District 1. So first, I'd like to thank Councilman Joe Green for taking a stand against hate and divisiveness in our community. Thank you also for respecting the rule of law, which is SB 54. I am here to express my outrage over how a quarter of Vistan voices were silenced at the last council meeting. When you took such controversial vote in absence of our representative, Councilman John Aguilera, who has the district with the largest Latino population, your actions just felt unjust and undemocratic. I request that he be given an opportunity to speak on this subject and have him inform the council how he would have voted. And I also request that this be reflected in official record. Thank you.
Thank you. Katsuya Fukuyama, followed by Mike Woods, followed by Ann Barron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Katsuya Fukuyama. At the last City Council meeting, as everybody was saying, that, sorry, I gotta take a look at it. Many residents, 38 to 48, possibly 50, I'm not sure the exact number, spoke in support of the California Value Act, which is SB 54, while 3 of the council members spoke of the ideological necessity of opposing it. I would like to address the potential financial impact that the council vote will have on Vista taxpayers, that's us, because there was no discussion on how much it's going to cost us. It's funny because earlier tonight, council was talking about how we can afford to hire 1 or 2 deputies, maybe. Here, the council never, ever talked about how much it will cost the city. Before going into dollar figures, I do like to talk about the program that ICE has, which is called Secure Communities, that already provides notification to DHS and ICE of criminal immigrants. According to the ICE website, Secure Community page, I quote, "For decades, local jurisdictions have shared the fingerprints of individuals arrested and or booked into custody with the FBI to see if those individuals have a criminal record and outstanding warrants. Under Secure Communities, the FBI automatically sends the fingerprints to DHS to check against its immigration databases. If these checks reveal that an individual is unlawfully present in the United States or otherwise removable, ICE take enforcement action," unquote. Now I'd like to move on to how much Secure Communities program cost. There's a study by, a study of the financial impact of the secure communities.
Your time is up, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, my point is that I'd like to have, I'm asking you to have another vote for 2 reasons, because Council Member John Aguilera wasn't here. The other reason is the cost never came to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Woods, followed by Ann Barron, followed by Ellen Cabrera.
Good evening. It was stated by this council in their opposition vote to the California Values Act that we must abide by the rule of law. I've spent 45 years of my adult life enforcing the rule of law. As the previous speaker just explained to you, the Secure Communities program already provides notification to ICE by local law enforcement of serious criminal immigrants. However, without prioritizing the enforcement of law, all of our efforts will result in confusion at best and anarchy at worst. Historically, our immigration laws have tried to prioritize enforcement to the most serious offenders. That is, until this administration's most recent policies. And what are those policies? According to the American Immigration Council, quote, the get tough approach to enforcement portrayed by the administration as an attempt to restore the rule of law in effect diverts attention of law enforcement agencies from those who have committed serious crimes and pose serious threats to the community. According to a DHS memorandum dated February 20th, 2017, quote, all personnel shall faithfully execute immigration laws of the United States against all removable individuals. The order does not talk about prioritizing enforcement. That same memo goes on to say that, quote, a highly successful force multiplier that allows local law enforcement officer to be designated as an immigration officer for the purpose of enforcing federal immigration law. According to California Legislator's Office, quote, the President's executive orders and the accompanying DHS memorandum outline a mass deportation strategy that will encompass a broad category of immigrants, all removable individuals. These documents describe the federal government's plan to use local law enforcement as force multipliers, relying heavily on police to help them deport the greatest number of people possible. We pay taxes for the sheriff to protect every single resident of Vista. We expect and rightfully demand that our deputies focus their full attention on protecting our entire community, not to be force multipliers for federal immigration. Your vote to oppose the California Values Act is sending a very real and unambiguous and potentially very expensive message to our residents and our deputies that this council wants that focus changed from Vista's needs to Washington's needs. But that's not what we're paying taxes for. For the sake of the taxpayers of Vista, I'm asking the entire council to reconsider their vote. Thank you.
Ann Barron, followed by Alan Cabrera, followed by Karina Contreras.
Hi, Ann Barron. I'm a volunteer with the Peace Resource Center of San Diego. We're actually been working very hard in San Diego. We cover the whole region, not just the city, but the whole county. We've been working really, really hard on creating police oversight, community-based police oversight. I was going to say a lot of other things. Today was a fascinating meeting just to hear the comments that people were making both on the dais and behind me. What I'm really wanting to talk about now is fascism. So the Peace Resource Center, we really work on peaceful alternatives to current military, violent, aggressive, militaristic. I said that already, but I just keep coming back to military. But what are the alternatives that we can use as a society? And I'm very concerned about some of the comments I heard tonight, especially the conversation where all of a sudden we were talking about code enforcement and all of a sudden swinging into we need more police, after being told actually that our crime rate is going down. Well, Vista's crime rate, and actually this is true throughout most of the country. Most crime rates are going down, except for rape, which is on the rise, but you don't really hear people talking too much about that. So fascism really, to me, rears its head when you hear people saying, even though the crime rate's going down, even though we have pressing needs, we have homelessness issues. I heard that over and over tonight. We need to address homelessness issues. And what I heard was instead, well, we'll address it by hiring more police. We will address it by instituting a military response, because that's what police are. Police have always been a military response. It's never been a community-based response. When we talk about community policing, it really is cops walking a beat, but still dressed in those uniforms. So today, I was actually aggressed by two men, two completely different men. Both of them are young, aggressed in very different ways. So one was a snarly young man who didn't like the way I was driving. So he's screaming all obscenities at me. And at a point when it was safe, I got out of my car and I walked over to him and I said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "Well, you're driving," and I won't even tell you the obscenities he's screaming at me. Meanwhile, I had 2 cars ahead of me. So there was nothing really I could do. He just decided that he was going to scream and use his superior size to intimidate me. I don't intimidate easily. So tonight I'm sitting here and I stand up because my back is hurting. It's a long meeting. And I have a very nice young sheriff officer who tries to do the same thing, intimidate me, not by using obscenities, not by using, threatening gestures, but by using his uniform, his position, his power, and he kept coming closer to me and tried to get me. The only thing he needed to do,
wrap up.
Sure. The only thing he really needed to do was to show me where it was written that I had to sit down.
Thank you.
Okay, so fascism. It's creeping in here, and I would really, really like to see it.
Come on. Thank you. Alan Cabrera, followed by Karina Contreras.
Blown away. I'm blown away at all of you. Thank you, Joe, for a little bit of our voice. Franklin said, let's get a deputy instead of park rangers, because we should do more enforcement over there. You have enough evidence. Everybody just blew you away with evidence, okay? You know what your problem is? Your attitude. You don't care about your people here. You don't. No hablan español. No les importa a ustedes nada la gente de aquí. And when you had to be here, you're on vacation, man. What's up? I think it's your attitude. I think you people could care less about us. And you demonstrate it clearly. I wonder if I'm walking across the street, man, Mr. Franklin, say, "Hey, Alan, how you doing?" Because I know who you are. But you don't have the humility, man. Remember, you're serving the community. You're not serving your color or your race or your background. I got like a minute and a half left. You change your mind from park rangers to a deputy. You let him get into your brains, okay? That's an attitude. Mrs. Rigby, same thing. You guys went on vacation and you shut everybody up. Who cares what you're saying? You knew you had it coming because you went on vacation, okay? Now we're back. You have to show us that you want to work with us, not us beg you to listen to us. Makes a big difference. Attitudes will change. You want to be voted again? Okay? Prove it. And by the way, you got to get the captain in sync with the people here. Because nobody said anything about Cornell, about Wick, about all the evidence that said that it was shot in the back. Families are still grieving. Vista's still grieving. And you people like, what's up? Look at you. Your attitude. I don't have the best attitude. You know what? My booty's been kicked, and you learn to stand your ground. And we have to stand our ground. We got to demand our rights from you people. You people got to figure it out. Thank you.
Karina Contreras.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karina Contreras. I've been before this council many times. We definitely have to remember what happened June 26th, because if you really want to enforce federal law, then I highly recommend you run for Congress. This is the city of Vista. We should be worrying about people, parks, streets, sidewalks that aren't there, crosswalks that aren't there, trees that aren't there. And you know, I don't think it's too much to ask for a revote. If a dog park can get a revote, I think SB 54 can get a revote too. Why are we even talking about Trump? Why are we bringing up the administration during a council meeting? Doesn't make any sense. You know, and we have so many problems in Vista. I never hear anybody talk about how we have one of the highest poverty rates in all of North County. Let's use that $200,000 plus to address some of the issues that we have here in our city. You know, we look at poverty rates, and then you look at children that are in poverty. It is ridiculous. I don't know if any of you all know the figures, but at one point, it was 31% of children here in Vista were in poverty. I think if you ask them, do you want a meal or do you want a sheriff? They're going to tell you they want a meal. If we want to reduce crime in this city, and you know, we heard it's already on, it's getting reduced. Why don't we invest in our youth? Why don't we create youth development programs? Why don't we address the structural issues within our community and the fact that we have 2 vistas? Maybe y'all don't see it. Maybe you just kind of drive by it every once in a while, but some of us have to live there. And we very much love our community. But what we don't like to see is people that are hardworking be targeted by the people that are supposed to represent them. Because again, if you want to dictate federal law, go ahead and run for Congress. Get elected to represent the state. Don't do it at City Council. Thank you.
That's our last speaker for oral communications, so I will start with remarks. I will start with Councilmember Green.
Should be on. Should be on.
Boom, there we go. All right, hey, I just want to thank everybody for showing up, staying the whole time. Thank you guys so much for your comments. I also do want to publicly apologize to Councilmember Franklin. I said some things that were inappropriate at our last council meeting. I did say I was so mad I wanted to hit you in the face, and I sincerely apologize. It was unprofessional, and I let myself go. Although I was very upset, I should not have said that. So with that said, I just want to publicly apologize to you for that. Other than that, thank you guys all for showing up tonight. I appreciate my community showing up and being heard. Thank you.
Councilor Aguilera.
Thank you, Madam. You want to go ahead?
I just, excuse me. I also want to say thank you to everybody who came out tonight. And I appreciate hearing your voices, and I appreciate you staying. And also to staff, thank you for all that you do for our community. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I want to address everybody's concern that I might be missing. Thank you for your concern, but I'm here, and I'm always here. I'm here to fight for what I believe in, what I think is right and just. My voice and your voices have been heard by this council. I discussed with staff my displeasure with discussing the subject of the California Values Act. I feel it is not appropriate, an appropriate subject for a city council to be discussing when it should be concerned with traffic, streets, and housing. So I guess we do agree on something, Karina. These are things we can fix. The vote that was taken will not change how the sheriff processes people or have any other real impact. The reason I was away, first of all, I put God first, family second, and then business. I missed the meeting on the 26th of June because I was out of town with my daughter at a national volleyball tournament. We were informed of the tournament dates in January when it was announced that her team was eligible to compete. Our tickets were purchased in April, long before the agenda for June 26 was decided. I did not choose to put the subject on the agenda. The discussion of June 26 has only served to divide the city. And that makes me sad. I've heard some hurtful statements made of my colleagues that I know not to be true. Many of the statements have surprised and disappointed me. So yes, you've been heard. Now let's move on and be a better people and make Vista a better place for all by taking care of city business. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll do mayor's comments here. I just want a reminder that the city has designated cool zones that are free air-conditioned places where the public can stay cool during the hot days. The Vista Library and the McClellan Senior Center are designated cool zones. The cool zone hours and tips on staying cool are available online at ourcityofvista.com. And the other thing is the Vista Library is hosting a Great American Songs event on Sunday, August 19th from 1:30 to 2:30. This event's free and open to the public. You can call 760-643-5100 for more information. And I will turn it over to my city manager.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, Councilman Frank, I'm sorry. Did I skip over you?
That's quite all right. I have a very brief remark. I just wanted to say to the men and women of the Sheriff's Department and the men and women of the Fire Service of Vista how much we appreciate them putting their lives on the line for us every day. And I wanted to tell them how proud that me and all of my neighbors are whenever we see them in our neighborhood, and how good it makes us feel to know that they're there to keep us safe. So thank you to them.
Okay, now, city manager.
Thank you.
Nope. Councilmember Aguilera.
Sorry, I do have one announcement. Alta Vista Botanical Gardens Save Your Scraps workshop on August 25th. The workshop is free to Vista residents. However, registration is required. Information is available on our cityofvista.com website, as well as the Alta Vista Gardens website. Thank you.
Okay, now the city manager.
Sure, anybody else? Just two quick items. Vista Unified is starting school tomorrow. So that means that the Wave is no longer open during the weekday. It's just open on weekends except for Labor Day and a night splash event on Friday, August 17th. So just FYI on that. And the Moonlight's third summer musical, Hunchback of Notre Dame, that will start tomorrow night for the public and run through September 1st. Thank you.
And everybody drive carefully because all the schools are started. I know my granddaughter starts tomorrow, so a lot of schools start now. So just drive carefully and look out for kids. How about city attorney? Do you have anything? City clerk, you have any announcements down there? Okay. Okay, with that, then we're going to adjourn tonight's meeting to honor the memory of Robert Carter, who passed away over the weekend. He was one of the first members of our Investment and Advisory Committee, serving since March 28, 1995, and so he will be very missed in our city. So with that, I will adjourn.